Chapter 1333. Zhang Xiaobao and the leader of the local tribe, Seymour Domohi, Luofach. When the two of them met, they didn't shake hands or hug each other. They didn't even get close to each other. The two of them were 10 meters apart. Zhang Xiaobao sat on a chair with his back facing the south. Seymour Domo, he only had a stool and sat facing the north. When he looked at Zhang Xiaobao, he had to look up. It was not that Zhang Xiaobao was deliberately making things difficult for him. It was the rules that represented the dignity of the Tang Empire. How could a leader of a small tribe be on the same level? He was already being merciful by not making him kneel. As for why they could put their arms around each other's shoulders when they met, it was to show that they were close. When to be close and when to be dignified was decided by the person in charge. It was also decided by strength. At this moment, Zhang Xiaobao decided to be dignified. After all, thunder and rain were the grace of the emperor. Seymour Domohi below? Luofach. Brother Hima Wu, why are you here? Zhang Xiaobao asked in a sarcastic tone. Seymour Domohi? Luofach. Brother Hima Wu felt very uncomfortable when he heard this. He was not your subordinate. What right do you have to treat me like this? Although he was unconvinced, Seymour Domo he showed a respectful expression and replied, We see that the envoy from your country has traveled a long way and have worked hard. Therefore, we are here to greet you personally. After he finished speaking, he raised his head and looked at them, as if he was here to visit them, giving them a sense of being neither servile nor overbearing. Zhang Xiaobao, who was sitting on the chair, sneered. Haha, we are not here to visit you. We are here to kill. Since we are here, someone must die. Seymour Domo he took a deep breath and forced a smile. He asked, Who do you want to die? Those who stare at us die. Those who bare their teeth at us die. Those who are disrespectful to us die. Those who do not listen to us die. Those who make me uncomfortable when they smile at us, die. Come, Seymour Domo he give me a smile. Zhang Xiaobao rested one leg on the armrest of the chair and leaned against it, casually saying to Seymour Domo he. Beside him, someone had already raised his gun and aimed it at Seymour Domo. Seymour Domo felt deeply humiliated. It wasn't just him. When everyone heard Zhang Xiaobao's words, they felt that Zhang Xiaobao was too much of a bully. He had come to take a look. Even if they didn't treat him well, there was no need to humiliate him. Facing the threat of death, Seymour Duomo finally chose to compromise. He raised his head and gave Zhang Xiaobao a smile that he thought was the most beautiful. He really did not want to die in such a sullen manner. Yes, not bad, but you need to practice more when you go back. We will go over tomorrow morning. Are you all ready to welcome the Shangguan Kingdom? Zhang Xiaobao and Weiwei nodded and asked Seymour Domo he. We're all ready. Seymour Domo he couldn't say anything else. In truth, he hadn't been prepared at all. He had only just learned that the great Tang had come and said that they wanted to trade. After learning that it was Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan's army, he had come with a nervous heart, intending to understand the purpose of their visit. He hadn't expected that Zhang Xiaobao would treat him like a subordinate on their first meeting. After all, he was the leader of more than 3,000 people, and yet he wasn't given the slightest bit of respect. This was too much. After silently cursing, Seymour Domo he felt much better. He adjusted his emotions and began to consider proper matters. Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan had come to his territory. He had helped the Arabs before, so if they used this to cause trouble again, how should he deal with them? Zhang Xiaobao was satisfied this time. He didn't insist on making things difficult for this man. He had noticed that this man called Seymour Domo, he had an indifferent expression in his eyes. He was very calm, very relaxed and very reserved. He wanted to be on equal footing with him and display the prestige of a leader of a small tribe. For some reason, Zhang Xiaobao couldn't help but think of that Filipino President Aquino from a documentary. He was an idiot who couldn't see the situation clearly and had an extremely poor attitude. Every time someone died on his side, he would laugh. This was a sign of immaturity and political wisdom. Even if you were secretly happy and no one cared, you had to pretend. Even the President of the United States didn't dare to laugh. So what were you if you weren't an idiot? This was respect for life. This Seymour Domo, he gave Zhang Xiaobao precisely this feeling. Say, You have a tribe of 3,000 people that doesn't have anything. So what are you pretending for? What right do you have to appear equal in front of me and play neither servile nor overbearing? Haven't you read too many historical stories? No wonder the great Tang spoke so smoothly. With this thought in mind, Zhang Xiaobao waved his hand, closed his eyes, and leaned back to rest. Simo Domohi, you can go back now. We'll be there tomorrow. Why don't you stay for a meal? It's getting late. Someone immediately gestured to Simo Domohi, appearing rather polite. Okay, let's have a meal. We truly haven't eaten. Simo Domohi happily agreed. This way, please. This person was immediately depressed. He was just being polite, but this guy actually agreed. But since he had already said it, he naturally had to entertain him. Simo Domo followed them and kept looking at the situation of the camp. He found that it was very messy. The tents were not arranged in rows or columns. Instead, there were tents here and there. It seemed like Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan's troops were really not good at marching and fighting. At the same time, he was thinking about what he had done wrong. According to the books of the great Tang, many of them said that when one went out to meet the leader of another place, he would be neither servile nor overbearing and would criticize the other party. In the end, when the other party said to push him out to be beheaded, the person who was pushed out would laugh a few times and be asked why he was laughing. After that, it would be easy to handle. He would say his own words, and the other party's leader would think that it made sense, so he would succeed. But today, he didn't say that he was going to push Xiaobao out to be beheaded. Instead, he aimed the gun at Xiaobao. If Xiaobao were to laugh, would he die before Xiaobao could ask him why he was laughing? He had seen that spear before, and it was more formidable than a bow and arrow. If the arrow was far away, he might be able to dodge or block it, but the spear would not give him the time. By the time he heard the sound, he would already be dead. For a moment, Simo Domo was very depressed. He also knew that the other party didn't want him to stay for dinner, probably because he had helped the Arabs before. Those damned Arabs, they actually lost, and they even ran away so quickly. Okay, get up. Xiaobei and the others are waiting to eat hot pot. You go and cut them. Xiaobei says that he wants to eat thin strips. You think of a way. Zhang Xiaobao was still lying on the chair when Wang Wan came over to urge him. In truth, she could also cut, but she could not compare to Xiaobao. In order to make her little brother and sister eat happily, she needed Xiaobao to do it. Zhang Xiaobao was indeed a little tired, not physically but mentally. He knew that it didn't matter what kind of attitude Seymour Demoki had just met. What mattered was whether Seymour Demoki had the same idea as his people. A leader's influence on the people under his rule was extremely large, second only to the influence that parents and teachers had on their children. If Simo Domohi's daily propaganda was hostile to the great Tang, then the more than 3,000 people probably had the same idea. As he got up and walked to the kitchen, Zhang Xiaobao said to Wang Wan, "When the Japanese invaded, let's not talk about invasion, and just talk about integration." They also started teaching Japanese in the 3 northeastern provinces. From this, one can see how smart the Japanese are. But in the end they failed. I'm worried that Simo Domo, he will also have nothing better to do and educate his people. If that's the case, we won't be facing the same opponent. Wang Wan smiled and said, I can see that Simo Domo he is using his cleverness in the wrong place. He probably thinks that we're always high and mighty, and lack someone who dares to communicate with us normally. So he wants to play this role. In truth, he still has too little understanding of our Chinese culture. There's no such thing as equality, and no leader would be so cheap, including Li Longji. We really do treat him this way. But it's not because he lacks feelings in this aspect. It's because we can provide him with benefits. He laughed and was very happy when Xiaobei stole food from him. But without us, Xiaobei wouldn't have had a chance to steal food. Even if he did, would he still be happy? He's being magnanimous by not teaching Xiaobei a lesson, but he'll definitely teach Xiaobei's family a lesson. If Xiaobei was an ordinary person, Li Longji would teach a lesson to the local officials. As for us, we can communicate with the people of Tang equally. But Simo Domo he thinks that we're used to being high and mighty, so he wants to give us a special impression. Pooh. Well said. Where's the meat? Zhang Xiaobao had already arrived at the big tent that served as the kitchen. He saw the washed wild vegetables, but he couldn't find the meat that he wanted to cut. "Little young master, here. Someone outside answered and brought in a tray. There was a large piece of venison on the tray. It was estimated to be around 40 jin. Zhang Xiaobao glanced at it and said, "It's too much. Xiaobei, the children in the tribe, and the 4 injured people can't finish it. There's still other dishes." "It's not much. Don't we have little young master and little miss? 5 jin is enough for the 2 of you. After dipping it in the soup, the weight of the venison will be lighter." The person who came and looked at Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan with an expectant gaze. "We'll eat with you. Little young master, we need someone to watch the little ancestors when we eat hot pot. Tonight we have 2 dishes. One is braised with a variety of flavors, the other is wild vegetable dipping sauce, and the other is fish soup. It's not worse than hot pot. The main dish is hot dry biscuits." The person introduced what they were going to eat tonight. He meant that they didn't need to eat with them. They ate well, so they could accompany the little ancestors to eat hot pot. Zhang Xiaobao hesitated and looked at Wang Wan. Seeing Wang Wan nod, he said, "Okay, Cuckoo and I will be extravagant today. We won't eat with you. Find Duo, and invite him to eat. He probably hasn't eaten our hot pot before." "That's great. Here, put the meat." The person answered happily and ran out. Zhang Xiaobao began to cut the meat. As for the strips that Xiaobei mentioned, he didn't care at all. If the meat in hot pot was cut into strips, it would disappear when it was put into the pot. Even thin slices like this had to be prepared for the children in the tribe. Otherwise, with their movements, the meat couldn't be picked up at all. It would become the bottom of the pot after a few dips. Zhang Xiaobao's movements were very fast. He cut the meat according to the horizontal lines. When he cut, he first destroyed the lines. When he dipped the meat, he slightly froze it and kept the moisture. When he cut it, Wei pulled, and it immediately became a roll. Wang Wan looked and had nothing to do, so she praised, "Good knife skills." Chapter 1334. Don't just look at it and talk. Put it in the wooden tray over there. Don't let it melt later. It is not easy to form cold fresh meat in such a short period of time. If it is slightly frozen, once it is cut, it will become the taste of watery meat. Zhang Xiaobao did not stop moving his hands and instructed Wang Wan, who was standing at the side and watching without helping. Wang Wan had been admiring Zhang Xiaobao's knife skills. It looked very ordinary. He just made a cut and then lifted the knife. What was different was that the meat was rolled up instead of in pieces. It was obvious that he had added other movements when he was cutting. There was a hidden force. After all, cutting by hand was not like a meat slicer. Hearing Zhang Xiaobao's dissatisfied voice, she smiled and quickly went to get the wooden tray and the ice. She did not forget to put a few pieces of ice around it. After putting it on the tray, Wang Wan looked at the meat roll and praised, "The meat is so good. It is actually a small circle of white meat. It is almost like lamb. There is fat. Otherwise, why does it need to be frozen? Otherwise, the fat can't be cut so thin and stick to the knife. Unless I let the knife and the meat be at the same temperature and put a layer of other oil on it. Of course, a special knife can also be used, but we don't have that technology. It would be better if we have cold-forged knives." Zhang Xiaobao took another piece of meat and sighed as he cut. Wang Wan did not say anything. The technology was several generations behind. If there was cold forging technology, the first knife made would not be a kitchen knife, but a scalpel. Also, the cutting knives and kitchen knives of the lathe were luxurious enough to use cold forging technology. Seymour Domo is staying for dinner. Should we entertain him? Wang Wan thought of another thing. Entertain him. Just entertain him. He will eat hot pot with us. The people he brought will eat with others. It is a matter of etiquette. But we don't need to talk to him about serious matters. We don't even need to talk. Zhang Xiaobao suddenly stopped and looked at the meat. It was actually injured. This piece has to be cut out. We don't want this part of the meat. The knife in Zhang Xiaobao's hand moved back a distance. He wanted to cut down and take a look. He shook his head and continued to move back. This time, he finally let go of the tangled piece of venison. Wang Wan took it and looked at it. She rolled her eyes a few times and said, "He must have hit a hard rock or something, and then stabbed himself. Otherwise, there wouldn't be such a scar in this place. It's not easy to live after all. I think it's good to be alive. If it's really too easy, don't you think life will be boring? There's still so much meat waiting to be cut. Now I know why it was so expensive to cut meat by hand." Zhang Xiaobao's movements were not slow, but the meat was too thin, and it required a lot of strength from his wrist. When he exerted force downwards, he had to cut, not press. Otherwise, the meat below would be a little deformed. Then, when the knife went down, it would either be thin or thick, and there would even be a situation where half of the meat was cut. Taking the sharpening stick, Zhang Xiaobao rubbed the knife against it twice and continued to work hard. "I will never cut meat for them like this again. It's so torturous. The knife will be blunt after 2 cuts." Wang Wan looked at Zhang Xiaobao always using the sharpening stick to scrape the knife. Until now, she still didn't understand why, because she didn't need to use that thing when cooking. Zhang Xiaobao shook his head lightly. "It's scraping the edge of the knife. The oil on the knife is scraped off. The knife is fine. How about this? Prepare a basin of hot water and a basin of cold water. I will first put the knife in the hot water, then use a towel to wipe it. After wiping it, put it in the cold water, then use another towel to wipe it. This way, there's no need to use the sharpening stick. Use the hot water to get rid of the oil, and use the cold water to lower the temperature of the knife. Every industry is not easy. Eating, it seems to be the simplest, but also the most complicated. Then why is it so expensive to cut meat by hand? Is it because of manual labor?" Wang Wan asked suggestively. "Because you can't tell the quality of the meat when it's cut by a machine. The texture will be messy. If you ask, people will say that it's the machine. But when it's cut by hand, the texture will be there. No chef will cut the meat for you under the condition of destroying the texture of the meat. Otherwise, this chef won't be qualified. In this way, you can eat with ease. You can eat whatever meat you want. You don't have to worry about the mutton oil added to other meat. The popularity of hand-cut meat is because of the quality of the meat. The price of meat is cheap. Everyone can't buy good meat. The main reason is that in restaurants, it's a case of bad money driving out good money. But with hand-cut meat, everyone will choose this kind of meat in order to eat better. Thus, there's also the saying of good money driving out bad money. The main reason is that eating is different from other things. Everyone knows that illness comes from the mouth. Moreover, when eating in restaurants, naturally, they won't care about the difference in price. Thus, the slightly more expensive hand-cut meat is more popular than the machine-cut meat, that you don't know what kind of meat it is. Zhang Xiaobao shook his left hand as he spoke. He had been using this hand to press the meat. It was cold. His fingers were numb from the cold. Wang Wan nodded in understanding. She knew about this matter. Chinese people were really smart. Not only were foreigners afraid, but Chinese people were also afraid. If it was Chinese people, they could sell a pound of mutton that cost 70 renminbi for 20 renminbi. Just like how mutton that cost 30 renminbi was sold for 10 renminbi more than 100 years ago. Let's not talk about the specifics first. Just talk about the similar taste and how low the cost of the food was. Thus Chinese people were afraid. Generally, they would go to Muslim to buy beef and mutton and cut it themselves at home. It was very ironic. They were religious people who should be restrained and rejected, but they had no choice but to go to other people's places to buy things, because no one dared to sell fake meat in that place. That was ethnic conflict, and people would die. Selling things to foreign countries in terms of the same quality was still very cheap. What made the foreign industry even more afraid was that China's exports were much lower in quality, but the price was much lower. Yes, the quality was indeed not very good, but the price was cheap. If it was a car, quality was very important. But what quality did disposable tableware need? It was thrown away after eating. Are we Chinese people really the scourge of this planet? Wang Wan found it funny and asked. China is the scourge of the entire universe, so let the Chinese people rule this planet first, and then scourge the universe. The others can't do it all, and can only suffer losses. The people of this deer are really good. The meat is delicate. If you look at it under the setting sun, it's like the texture of a cloth. Zhang Xiaobao pinched a piece of meat and looked at it under the light. Wang Wan came over to take a look and nodded. It's really good. It exercises all year round, and it's different from other animals. It's especially better than wild boar meat. The fiber is not so thick, but it's a pity that there's no marbling. If you didn't deliberately let people put some fat, you wouldn't even see a bit of white when you cut it. Marbling, it's nothing more than the ratio of protein to fat. That's other people's rules, not our Chinese rules. If you take 5A beef, other than making steak, can you stir-fry it and eat it? If you cut it along the texture, you'll separate the fat from the thin. If you don't and cut it horizontally, then fine, let's not eat the shredded meat. Eat the foam, it will break. It's a matter of eating habits. It's not always good when others say it's good, unless it's specially sold to them. It's like eating fish and crabs. Do people in England eat crabs? Do people in America eat carp? There are a lot of thorns. But in China, if you have wild crabs and carp, they're very expensive. The English think it's hard to eat crabs. Lobsters are all peeled by the chef. We don't need it, we have special tools to eat it. There are 8 pieces of crabs, it's very delicious. And carp, of course, people in America don't eat it. It's very earthy, and there are too many thorns. Why? Because the way they eat it is simple. Children in China know to spit out the thorns when they eat fish from a young age. They don't wait for their parents to remove the thorns and fry the fish with breadcrumbs. Many people are sad. They only say that the food in America is good. Western food, in fact, I don't like to eat this. I'd rather cook it myself. It's not that other people's food is bad. People always eat it, but I'm not used to it. It's too nutritious. I don't need so much nutrition. When you're like me, you eat lean meat. I don't need marbled fat. What I care about is explosive strength, not fitness. I don't need so many special muscles on my body. Okay, it's not easy to eat. By the time Xiaobao finished speaking, he had finally finished cutting the meat. His 2 hands were swinging vigorously. In just a short while he had cut more than 40 jin of meat. Moreover, it was a high standard thickness. The knife was only now showing its age. It was not as good as the cold-forged knife. The difference was too big. Wang Wan was also not idle. In fact, there were not many meat rolls on a tray. Zhang Xiaobao cut them quickly like magic. When you looked at him, he cut them again and again. But if you counted according to his movements, you would find that he was very fast when he counted the numbers. It was a visual error. It was the same as when the wheels of a car turn very fast in one direction, and then you saw it turn back very slowly. After placing the last meat roll on the 10th tray, Wang Wan looked at Zhang Xiaobao and smiled. Dear, what I admire most about you is your love and support for our Chinese tradition. I will not say whether you are right or wrong. I only want to say that your persistence is not something that all Chinese people have. Just like what we had discussed before, many people who went overseas said that China was not democratic and developed slowly. The quality of the people was not as good as them overseas. However, he had never considered that if China was suddenly gone, would his status as a Chinese be affected in the outside world? Why are they so nice to him? It's because this country that he looked down on has nuclear weapons, high GDP, and influence over other countries. Does he really think that he is powerful? Does he think that he is Qian Shuesan? Yes, as I said, they are far inferior to the Utans. Without Israel, the Utans are rootless duckweeds, so the Utans outside will defend Israel. They are a nail in the religious community of the country we are attacking now. I won't say whether they are right or wrong, I only admire their spirit. Let's go, you can take 2. I don't have enough hands. Are you still my wife? Are you not my wife? Zhang Xiaobao started to design trays. There were 10 trays, and he must find a way to carry 1 trays. He will carry 1 trays, carry 1 in each hand, place 1 on his arm axle and 1 on his shoulder. That will be 7 trays, and he still has 3 trays left. But Wang Wan had her hands behind her back and was looking at him with her feminine eyes. She did not help him. Carry 1 and carry 2. If you don't work, I will divorce you and divorce you. I am scared to death. Dear, do we need a marriage certificate before getting a divorce? Take it out, and let this concubine take a look. Wang Wan helped Zhang Xiaobao adjust the tray on his head, and said with a smile like a flower. Chapter 1335. Fresh venison is here. Zhang Xiaobao shouted, and rushed over with 7 trays on his body. The 9 little guys immediately rushed forward, and reached out to help. Wow, brother, you're amazing. Are you going to perform acrobatics? It would be even better if you could hold one in your mouth. It's not difficult at all. People can put a very long pole, and people can move back and forth on it. You can hold it in your mouth, really. Xiao Bei said to his brother as he tiptoed, and took the tray down from his brother's head. Many acrobatics can be vomited out after eating. Do you want me to vomit a few mouthfuls for you? Zhang Xiaobao said discontentedly. Hehe. No, if you don't say it, I'll eat it even if you vomit it out. When you say it, I always think of those drunk people vomiting. It's so uncomfortable. Look, how is my brother's knife skills? I'm asking you, Su Yilong. What are you looking at? Xiao Bei kissed his brother, ran to the table with the tray, and asked Su Yilong, who was staring at the meat roll. Su Yilong was looking at the lamb roll. He had never seen such a thing. He used to eat hot pot at between the clouds and the water. He didn't know what hot pot was before that. He used to eat all slices. How did it become a roll today? Say something, venison. Don't you recognize it? Xiao Bei looked at Su Yilong's confused look and said aloud, Why is it a roll? Su Yilong murmured, Because it's cooked faster when it's put in the soup. My family used to eat it like this. Oh, it's not like this to outsiders. It's not a big deal. If you want to eat it, wait until we go back. If you eat in the restaurant opened by my family, you can ask for a roll. Xiao Bei made a gesture of boiling the venison, and began to distribute the food. The children in Duo tribe were very honest. Each of them had a small hot pot in front of them, but they were a little far from the hot pot. When they wanted to eat, they had to stand up from the chair and walk to the front. Otherwise, they couldn't boil the food. During the process of eating, they had to go back, because the small table with the plates was next to the chair. They were not the only ones. Xiao Bei and the others were the same. However, the 9 little fellows were already used to it. They would go there when they were cooking, and come back when they were eating. They would just make a few more trips. Su Yilong frowned and said, That's not what I meant. What I wanted to say was, why would the frozen meat be rolled up after being cut? It's just like the shaved ice you sold in the beginning. In fact, it's all rolled up and then broken. Why are you asking such a question? Go back and study physics yourself. How would I know? It's not like I've learned enough. I'm just starting to eat. I don't care about all that. It's such a mess. The more I think about it, the more vexed I get. There's no end to learning. After Xiao Bei finished speaking to Su Yilong, she said to the children of Duo tribe. She picked up the chopsticks with one hand, and a small spoon with a fine net in the other. She picked up the meat with the chopsticks, placed it on the small spoon, and dipped it into the small hot pot in front of her. In fact, she didn't need to use the small spoon. Just the chopsticks were enough. However, the children in the tribe were used to using their hands. They were very bad at using chopsticks. She had to demonstrate. Even so, the children in the tribe were very busy when they were eating. The translator was also busy, but he couldn't eat yet. It wasn't that he couldn't eat. He wanted to eat, and Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan would definitely support him. However, he knew that if he ate, he would be isolated when he went back. The hot pot in front of him was not for him, but for the little ancestors. Rules were rules. The children in the tribe were all very honest. They felt that there was a distance between the small pot and the place where they ate, so they proposed to move the small table forward. After hearing the translator's words, Xiao Bei was very helpless. She stopped and said, No, it's burning charcoal. There's charcoal poison, which is carbon monoxide. Brother and sister said that this thing will come into contact with the red blood cells, and then squeeze out the oxygen molecules. Then we will be poisoned. We are children and can't bear it. If it was in the open, it would be fine. However, we are in a tent now. You have to bear with it. Look at us, aren't we the same? Aya, you don't understand, right? Anyway, it's fine as long as you know that you can be poisoned. Xiao Bei actually didn't know what carbon monoxide was. She had never seen it before. But she believed that this thing was the same as what her brother and sister said. Her brother and sister wouldn't lie to her. If they said that it was impossible, it was definitely impossible. Furthermore, It was definitely related to her body, not a matter of money. Xiaobei still had some impression of throwing the big pearls on the marble floor when she was young. She couldn't understand why she did that back then. Now the big pearls were still at home. It was probably good luck that they threw them for fun. She wouldn't throw them again. That was money. Her brother and sister were really too much. They let her and the others throw such big pearls to play with. She hoped that her younger brothers and sisters wouldn't break them now. Luckily, there was a house and they could play inside. However, they shouldn't break the glass. Pee and the like were unavoidable. That was Agarwood. When she thought of the things she used in the past being ruined by her younger brothers and sisters, Xiaobei didn't know what to do. She pursed her lips and ate a mouthful of venison. What's wrong with our family's most lively Xiaobei? Zhang Xiaobao didn't pay attention to Simo Duomo who was eating hot pot with them. He just smiled at Duo, and then focused on his younger brothers and sisters. I'm thinking about the problem of the house, Xiaobei said very honestly. Wang Wan was stunned for a moment, and tried hard to think of a house. Zhang Xiaobao immediately said, when I first made a house for you, my thoughts were very simple. It was to let my younger brothers and sisters have their own space. The price didn't matter. How much money could be exchanged for the happy smiles of my younger brothers and sisters? Yes, that was the best house in Tang. Even your emperor uncle was jealous. Today, it was the only one in the world with a Mercury dynamic balance foundation and a back connection structure. It was the only one in the world with a chain design. It was the only one in the world with a self-floating water supply structure. It was the only one in the world with a constant temperature heating and air changing system. Back then, our grandpa Bai and the others kept an eye on your house all day, because they knew that your sister and I would always put the most advanced things in your house. The most important thing was the wood agarwood. In fact, it wasn't valuable. What was valuable was its concept. Now, do you want to know what the house that Jiziangrui is using now looks like? Do you want to know how safe it is for them to play in it? Yes. The 9 little guys shouted in unison. They could also go in now, but the height was a little low. However, this house was very big, and was also relatively high. If the adults didn't straighten up when they went in, they wouldn't hit their heads. What house? Simo Domo suddenly interrupted. He felt that he was left out. It has nothing to do with you. Anyway, don't expect the children in your tribe to live there. That house is ours. The function of the house, if I say it out loud, you will be scared to death. The function is the place to use it. Anyway, you don't understand. Brother, hurry up and tell us, what has become of the house now? Xiaobei explained to Simo Domo, then shook his head. He felt that he shouldn't say it. The other party wouldn't understand. Zhang Xiaobao answered under the anticipation of his younger brothers and sisters. There are more things in the house now. One is the oxygen supply, and the other is the battery heating. Why? Yes, why? Xiaobei asked very cooperatively. Then she stared at her brother with her big eyes. What she meant was that she had cooperated with him once. Next time, she wouldn't cooperate with him at a critical moment. Moi. Zhang Xiaobao kissed his sister hard. This kind of silent communication was the most intimate. Others only thought that his sister was asking questions. But he knew that his sister wasn't asking questions. She was angry. It was a big favor for her to compromise for him. Brother, if you don't say it, I will tell my mother, grandfather, and grandmother when we go home. I will say that you are deliberately keeping them in suspense. Let's see who they will side with. Xiaobei threatened again. You should tell your emperor and let him control your brother. Simo Domo said to Xiaobei as if they were close friends. Xiaobei turned his head and pursed his lips. Are you stupid? I was just saying it to my brother. But you took it seriously. If I took it seriously, it would be useless no matter who I looked for. Even if I looked for my grandparents, they would tell me to beat your brother when we see him. In the end, when we really saw him, we couldn't wait to feel sorry for him. Do you think I am stupid? This is a disease that needs to be treated. Brother, tell us quickly. We are all waiting. Ha 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 ha. Zhang Xiaobao laughed heartily and kissed his sister again. He said, as expected of the person in charge of foreign affairs. You are indeed amazing. Good, let me tell you. Now Jiziangrui is using your original house. There is a separate ceiling system inside. That is, when the overall pressure from the outside is too strong, the house will be completely sealed immediately. Air can only go out but not in. Even the Tang Empire's Ministry of Works doesn't have such a thing. They use an automatic response system that your sister specially designed. There are oxygen cylinders inside. When there is an external force, they will open in a chain. The principle is very simple. It is a passive lever structure in gears. Now your sister and I are researching the light sensor system. That is, when the outside is dark, the house will immediately light up. There are batteries and light bulbs. This technology will scare people to death if it is taken out now. Unfortunately, it will not be able to be automatically controlled by computers in the next few decades. This is the regret of your sister and I. The house is also equipped with a small battery power propulsion system. It can move on its own on water. Its speed is not as fast as the current Tang Empire's most advanced small diesel engine, but it can ensure that a human-powered boat can't catch up. Also, the most important thing is the ability to fly after the hydrogen cylinders are turned on. We have added a distributed balloon connection system above the house. In an emergency, the house can fly up in 15 minutes. Zhang Xiaobao explained. Seymour, Domo and Duo didn't understand. But Su Yilong's eyes were shining. She finally knew what her grandfather's generation had lost. They didn't keep an eye on the house that Zhang Xiaobao and Wang family were using for their children. They had kept an eye on it. Why did they give it up now? Didn't her grandfather say before that if they wanted to see the technology level of Zhang Xiaobao and Wang family, it was enough to see their children's house? Why did they forget? Was it because Xiaobei and the others didn't use that house? But they still had younger brothers and sisters. Good luck had come out. Miscalculation, a big miscalculation. Xiaobei didn't expect that the house that he used to live in had been improved so much. He looked at his brother, and then looked at his sister who was smiling. He patted his head and said, "Today, people always think that the people from the Ministry of Works are the most skilled. In fact, it's my brother and sister who have mastered the most advanced technology. I don't even ask whether the house will fall down, because it's flying too high. I guess it's just like in the water. When I reach a certain depth, I have to readjust my posture, and then exert my strength to go down. As long as the thickness of the balloon is enough, the house can be suspended at a certain height. Brother Xiaohai, now you know the difference, right? My brother and sister must have calculated it. When you were calculating the quadratic equations, my brother and sister calculated the relationship between the lift force, air density, and the self-gravity of the object, right? Yes, I'm still far from it, Xiaohai said. He knew what Xiaobei was talking about. It was the theory that his brother and sister said when they made the airship. It sounded very simple, but it was very difficult to put it into practice. He didn't expect that his brother and sister not only applied it to the airship, but also to the house filled with passive gas that was not completely sealed. How much data was needed to support that? Don't think too much. When you learn this in the future, your sister and I will teach you. When we can't teach you anymore, it means that the technology of the Tang Empire has reached a certain height. Remember, never be proud and complacent, because the knowledge that you are proud of is actually the common sense of many people. When you think that you can stand at the peak of the world, because of this bit of knowledge, those who regard this as common sense will think that you are so insignificant in the starry sky. When Zhang Xiaobao talked to his younger brothers and sisters with a smile, he picked up some bean sprouts with his chopsticks and put them into the mushroom soup. Normally, one shouldn't put bean sprouts into the mushroom soup when eating. However, when cooking meat, bean sprouts must be added, because it could remove the smell of meat with its own earthy smell. It was very magical. Xiaobei and the others began to ladle the soup into the small pot in front of them. They didn't forget to teach the children in the tribe. Most importantly, each of them was given 2 ounces of yellow wine, which was being boiled in the big pot. They could drink it when it was warm. When used as a medicine, yellow wine was neither harmful nor harmful. That was to say, for many medicines that required people to abstain from alcohol, it was fine to drink less yellow wine, because it could exist in the form of non-alcohol. It was a seasoning. If it was like the formula of the Yunnan Baiyao brought by Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan, it was fine to drink yellow wine, because it could promote the efficacy of the medicine as wine. When it came to eating seafood with wine, Western cuisine used red wine, but it wasn't very good, because there would always be allergies. Chinese cuisine used white wine, but it wasn't very good, because there would still be cases of stomach upset, even if you ate a lot of garlic. The most authentic was yellow wine, drunk shrimp and drunk crab. If you said that you were drunk with red wine and white wine, it was not to ridicule you, but it was indeed more disgusting than drinking dry red wine mixed with Sprite. This was no longer a matter of taste, this was a matter of the intelligence of the entire family. Starting from your grandfather, there probably wasn't anyone with a high IQ. In this regard, Zhang Xiaobao didn't have to say anything, and Wang Wan handled it very well. She let her younger brothers and sisters drink some yellow wine, which was good for their health. Of course, if you drank too much, the aftereffects would be very strong. Simo Domo listened to them speak and watched them eat and drink. He also learned from them. The food was indeed very delicious, especially the dozens of seasonings. He felt dizzy just looking at them and didn't know how to choose. After that, he looked at the children and realized what seasonings Xiaobei and the others used, so Simo Domo followed suit. But what he didn't know was that Xiaobei and the others didn't use the same seasonings for everything. They would ask someone to bring a new bowl at any time, and then mix it according to the type of food. Zhang Xiaobao was also eating. As he ate, he felt that it was about time. So he asked Simo Domo, "We don't know each other very well. Can we hold a few competitions to improve our relationship?" Chapter 1336. At this moment, Simo Domo's mind was in a mess. He wanted to find out why the great Tang had come to his side. He knew that helping the Arabs had angered the great Tang, and they had even stolen many of the things stored in his tribe. Fortunately, the current season was not bad. If they had stolen the things in the winter, many people on his side would have starved to death. A group of great Tang soldiers had just left, and now another group had arrived. There were even more people than before, and the ones leading them were the legendary Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan. The Arabs had told him that these two were ruthless. Most importantly, in their first meeting today, the two of them did not seem to be very friendly. It seemed that he had used the wrong strategy and should have lowered his head. Now that the other side had brought up a competition, he did not know what the other side was planning. Could it be that they wanted to capture everyone on his side during the competition? With so many thoughts in his mind, the delicious taste of the hot pot gradually faded away. Simo Domo he slowly swallowed a piece of meat and looked at Zhang Xiaobao, who had suddenly become amiable, and asked, "What are we competing in?" "We can compete in anything. Hunting, fishing, chopping wood, fighting, whatever you say, we'll compete according to what you say. But the rules have to be the same, so that we can get to know each other better. Who knows, maybe we'll become a family." Zhang Xiaobao put down his chopsticks and smiled at Simo Domo. He took a small bowl in front of him and scooped out some soup from the hot pot. "Drink the soup. It's fresh." The taste of the hot pot soup depends on how it tastes when drunk directly. If it's not fresh, then it's not a good hot pot. Good. Simo Domo also took a small bowl and imitated Zhang Xiaobao's actions. He scooped out a bowl of soup and blew on it. He raised his head and gulped down half a bowl of soup. He praised, "It's delicious." Zhang Xiaobao, Xiaobei, and the others were speechless. "Is this how you drink soup? That's sour plum soup and mung bean soup, okay? To relieve the heat. Eat meat. We've found good meat today. Xiaobei, don't eat too much." Once again, Zhang Xiaobao invited Simo Domo to join his chopsticks. He didn't forget to shout at his younger brothers and sisters. Otherwise, if they ate too much, they wouldn't be able to sleep at night. They rubbed their stomachs and strolled around to digest the food. Xiaobei was explaining to the children of the Duo tribe how to best match the ingredients in the hot pot. He was very serious. When he heard his brother's words, he responded with a big smile and promised, "Don't worry. I won't eat so much meat today, nor will I eat rice. I'll just eat mushrooms and green vegetables. Also, I'll chew them up to help my stomach digest. Just now, I drank a bowl of soup to fill my stomach. When the soup is gone, I won't be full anymore." Zhang Xiaobao nodded. This was a good idea. He would drink the soup first, and when he felt full, he would stop and wait for the soup to be digested. He would feel better. Xiaobei turned around, picked up a plate of mushrooms, and placed it in front of the children of the tribe. Eat mushrooms. Eating mushrooms is good for the body. Don't just eat rice. I found that you guys can eat too much. Your appetite is comparable to people with big appetites. Immediately, an interpreter helped to explain to the children. The child in front of Xiaobei quickly ate a few mouthfuls of rice. Only then did he put more than 10 mushrooms into the small hot pot. He smiled at Xiaobei embarrassedly and continued to eat. The children in the tribe liked to eat two things: venison and rice. They even knew how to soak in the soup. Duo blushed shyly and explained to Zhang Xiaobao. It's because your rice is too fragrant. We don't have the same kind of rice in our area. We eat wheat, and the meat doesn't taste good. Usually we exchange the meat with the tribe. We can only eat one meal every few days. Sometimes, according to your calendar, we can't even see meat in a month. Yes, there is no oil in the stomach, and there is little salt, so the children eat more. You don't have to worry in the future. The children eat for 10 days to half a month. Look, they won't feel hungry after eating 3 meals like now. Zhang Xiaobao understood. In the past, the children of the villagers were like the children of the tribes. One reason was that they exercised a lot and needed to grow up. Another reason was that they didn't eat much oily food. The more they ate, the poorer they became. The poorer they were, the more they could eat. Their productivity couldn't keep up, so it was useless to say anything else. When Duo and Zhang Xiaobao talked, Simo Duomo was unwilling. He admitted that he couldn't compare to the Tang people, and that he had used the wrong strategy. But he was the leader of the entire tribe. Unless he returned to the country, his status would be lowered. If he was afraid of the Tang people, how could he be on equal footing with the leaders of a small part of his tribe? So he glared at Duo and said, Duo, why didn't your people stay at the place I arranged? What are they doing here? He was speaking in his native language. Zhang Xiaobao found it difficult to translate, but he still understood what he meant. He smiled and continued to eat the meat with his chopsticks. Duo was shocked and lowered his head. Then he realized, that's not right. I won't be under your command in the future. What right do you have to criticize me? I don't have many people, 126 in total. But I'm following the Tang people now. I'm not afraid of you. Thinking of this, Duo suddenly felt very comfortable and happy. He drank a mouthful of soup and nodded in satisfaction. He pushed a plate of deer tendons in front of Simo Duomo and said with a smile, Simo Duomo, Leader Simo Duomo, try this. There's something called chili in it. It tastes very good. You're here as a guest, so don't be polite. Eat well and eat until you're full. The meaning of these words was obvious. Duo treated himself as the host and Simo Duomo as a guest, and not as Simo Duomo's subordinate. Simo Duomo was dumbfounded. How could he not see Duo's attitude? He clearly wanted to leave the tribe. Simo Duomo couldn't say the rest of his words, nor did he touch the plate of tendons. He lowered his head, suppressed his anger, and began to think. Simo Duomo had to admit that he had never directly looked at Duo's small tribe of more than 100 people. In a small tribe of more than 100 people, there were old people, women, and children. There were far too few people who could participate in the hunt. Moreover, Duo's tribe didn't know how to grow wheat, nor did they know how to use nets to catch fish. When they finally managed to catch a few fish, they had to exchange it for wheat and salt. They were used to being bullied, and then they were sent to that outpost. He had never imagined that they would one day betray him. This was truly too infuriating. Duo, if you're not willing to go back now, I won't care. You can follow the Tang people for a while. Once the Tang people are gone, the things you earn will still be yours. I won't take them, Simo Duomo said to Duo after thinking for a while. Duo wasn't stupid. How could he not understand the meaning of his leader's words? He was clearly threatening him. Duo didn't say anything, instead looking at Zhang Xiaobao. Zhang Xiaobao had just finished rinsing a piece of meat and was about to put it into his mouth. When he heard the conversation between the two, he also used his rather poor Hindustani to answer. Haha, Leader Simo Duomo, you don't need to worry about Duo. We'll always lead his tribe. Once the Duo people are beaten into submission and obediently give us tributes every year, I'll bring Duo and the others back to the great Tang to live a better life. You should think about the competition. What are we competing in? Simo Duomo was shocked. He originally thought that he knew a bit of the great Tang language and could use the local language with Duo to get around this Zhang Xiaobao. Who would have thought that Zhang Xiaobao also knew the language of his people and even stood up to help Duo? He finally understood that he wouldn't be able to control Duo and the others in the future. Betrayal, this was betrayal. If I didn't treat you well, would you betray me? Simo Duomo glared at Duo again. But Duo responded with a sneer and straightened his neck, with an attitude that said, "Do whatever you want." Simo Duomo couldn't think of any other way. He took a pair of chopsticks and put it in his mouth to chew. The more he chewed, the more satisfied he felt. The spiciness and toughness of the tendon made his whole body feel comfortable. After eating the tendon, he said to Zhang Xiaobao, "I think there's no need to compete. You guys go your own way. We can give you some things." No need to compete? Okay. Then let's talk about how you helped our enemy, the Duo people. With your help, the Duo people dared to camp by the river and attack us, causing us great losses. A few people even lost their precious lives. How do you think I should settle this with you? Zhang Xiaobao slammed his chopsticks down and asked Simo Duomo with a gloomy face. The commotion around them suddenly disappeared, and everyone looked over. How could Simo Duomo have known that Zhang Xiaobao's mood would change faster than one could flip a book? He opened his mouth slightly, looked at Zhang Xiaobao, and then glanced at the various gazes staring at him. After a few breaths, he trembled and said, We helped them. In fact, it was them who threatened us. No, it wasn't us who wanted to fight with you. In other words, you were afraid of them threatening us, and then causing us to suffer great losses because you weren't afraid of us, right? Zhang Xiaobao pressed. You didn't lose anything. We died 6 people. Zhang Xiaobao grinned, revealing his teeth. I know that the 6 people who died weren't killed by the Arabs. They died of their own accord. Simo Duomo refused to admit it. They could have died if they stayed in their own homes. If you didn't help the Duo eaters, they wouldn't have set up camp by the river. If they didn't set up camp, we wouldn't have sent troops over. If we didn't send troops, there wouldn't have been a battle. If we didn't fight, how could our 6 people have died? And our supplies, the ammunition we used to kill the Duo eaters, isn't that money? In order to support us in this battle, some of the great Tang people collapsed in the munitions factory from exhaustion. Others suffered heatstroke while helping to repair the road. The donkey that should have been pulling the mill didn't pull the mill. When they came here to pull things, someone had to pull the mill. Our losses were great. What did the Duo eaters threaten you with? Tell me, and I'll treat you like how the Duo eaters threatened you. Aren't you not afraid of my great Tang? Zhang Xiaobao slapped the table as he spoke. It sounded very reasonable. Of course, Simo Duomo couldn't tell the truth. He could say that the Arabs had agreed to give them a lot of salt after taking over the salt-producing area. After being pressed by Zhang Xiaobao, he had no choice but to lower his head and say to Zhang Xiaobao, Sir, don't be angry. What do you think we should compete in? We'll compete. Oh, I'm not angry. I'm just excited. Haha, come eat. What are you standing around for? Eat. Leader Simo Duomo, are the tendons tasty? When you go back, I'll bring some back for you. We'll talk about the competition later. You can go back and think about it. But what I want to say is that since it's a competition, there naturally needs to be a reward. Why don't we make a bet? What do you think? Okay. What else could Simo Duomo say? He only felt sullen. He had to endure Zhang Xiaobao's constant flip-flopping, because he couldn't beat the Tang. Chapter 1337. During the meal, Zhang Xiaobao was very happy and personally sent Simo Duomo out of the camp. Simo Duomo was not full yet. He had many things on his mind. At the same time, he felt a lot of pressure, so much so that it was unbearable. The people who followed him here ate quite well, especially the salted vegetables prepared by the camp. Basically, each of them ate at least 2 plates. Finally, they saw salt that was free and not bitter to eat. They reckoned that they could drink water to their heart's content before going back to sleep. Walking back in the darkness, Simo Domo was still regretting that he had chosen the wrong person. He shouldn't have been swayed by the Arab's words. Even if the king had ordered him to stay so far away, disobeying a little wouldn't have been a big deal. He had helped the Arabs, but he hadn't received any benefits. Now that trouble had come, the king had offered no help at all. He didn't believe that the king wouldn't be able to get some information. It seemed that just like how he didn't care about Duodwa's 100-some men, the king didn't care about him. The stakes are too high. You want to wipe out my clan? As Seymour Damoga walked, he remembered the last bet they had discussed. He stopped and looked up at the sky, muttering to himself. The sky was pretty good tonight. There were stars twinkling, and there was also a crescent moon. But Seymour Domo always felt very oppressed, as if there was going to be a heavy rain. The content of the competition was decided by him. When the time came, both sides would discuss the specific rules to ensure fairness. However, the stakes could not be changed. If the tribe won, they would be forgiven by the great Tang. Furthermore, in the future, large amounts of salt would be sent to them every year. Just like what they ate today, there was no bitter taste, just a comforting saltiness. If they lost, the tribe would have to follow the Tang people. They would hunt, carry things, and dig for wild vegetables. Of course, they would also be able to obtain salt. However, the food would depend on what the Tang people gave them. There was definitely no good rice, and there were other foods that they had never seen before. King, let's fight it out with them. He didn't know what had happened to the king, but he could feel that the king was not happy. That's right, one of the bodyguards said to Simo Damoga. Using the light of the moon and stars, Simo Duomo looked at the person who was speaking. The corners of his mouth moved, as if he was mocking himself. He said, "Fight? More than 3,000 of us? They won't be afraid of us dying in front of them. They won't hesitate to kill us. Go back and have a good rest today. I'll think of something." The group sped up and returned to their home. The place where Seymour Domo lived was not bad. It was not a shack. He had a stone house, a courtyard, and a woman in the courtyard. Today, he was not in the mood to pamper the women. He knew that he had to think of a few good competitions to win against the great Tang people first. As for whether the great Tang people would be angry after winning, the worst result would be that he would lead his people to act together with the great Tang people, as if they had lost. As for the children, they ate the candy and were taken care of by Xiao Bei and the others. He didn't betray the tribe, but the tribe didn't treat him as a member of the tribe. The happy Duo did not care about his own people when Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan were drinking tea. He joined in the fun. He had never drunk something that was a little bitter, and then a little sweet. Zhang Xiaobao was in charge of making tea. He did not put out the kung fu tea. There was an outsider who did not understand kung fu tea. Zhang Xiaobao felt that it was better to just chat casually instead of explaining from beginning to end. It was just a teapot filled with tea leaves. He washed it, and then poured it into the three people's tea bowls. Duo was not afraid of the heat. After pouring more than half a bowl, he drank it directly. He watched as Zhang Xiaobao refilled it and drank it again. The bitter taste in his mouth seemed to be very comfortable. "Fill it up for me. There's always a gap." Duo found that every time Zhang Xiaobao poured tea for him, there was still a gap between the bowl and the mouth. He felt that he was drinking less. Zhang Xiaobao still poured more than half a bowl for Duo and explained, "It's rude to fill the bowl with tea. It's not convenient to hold the bowl when drinking. In our Tang, it's called bullying the guest when the tea is full. When you go to the Tang in the future, you must be careful. What competition do you think Seymour Duomo will propose?" Wang Wan slowly lifted her own tea bowl and drank gently. She tasted 2 small sips, and then drank a big mouthful. She also thought about Duo. After all, the other party was the most familiar with the local traditions. Duo first felt that Zhang Xiaobao's words about not filling the bowl to the brim were very interesting. Then he was stumped. He also could not guess what kind of competition the original chief would propose. It seemed that his people had no advantage over the people of the Great Tang. Competing in eating and drinking? The difference was too big. Competing in hunting? The Great Tang people had guns. Competing in fighting with warriors? When Zhang Xiaobao set up camp at night, The knife that suddenly appeared seemed to be very powerful. Shaking his head, Duo said embarrassedly, I don't know. Maybe it's a competition of strength to move big stones. Oh. Zhang Xiaobao nodded and began to ponder. He tried to determine if the people on Simo Domohi's side were strong or not. According to their race, daily nutrition and training, he found that the people on Simo Domohi's side did not have any advantage. There were a few strong people in his team, who were born with great strength. There's no need to think about what competition. If there are rules, we can continue to talk. Wang Wan was very relaxed and did not seem to be anxious. That's right. If they want to move stones, we can add tools in the rules. I don't believe that their tools can be compared to ours. Zhang Xiaobao said with a smile. He raised his head and drank the tea in the bowl. Then he poured more for the 3 people. Duo drank, and felt that this thing called tea was very magical. In the past, he had only heard about it from others, but had never tasted it. Even the people of Great Tang who saved him did not let him drink it. He watched as Zhang Xiaobao squeezed a small ball into the flask, and poured the water nonstop. The water that flowed out had that smell, so he drank as much as he could. He wanted to see if the small ball would always have that smell. In addition to the food he had eaten before, he finally could not drink anymore. He could only slow down and ask, why does this tea always have that taste? Because this is good tea. It can be brewed more than 10 times. Now it has only been brewed 4 times. If it's your first time drinking, I advise you not to drink too much. Otherwise, you will get drunk and can't sleep at night. Zhang Xiaobao finally understood why Duo kept staring at the teapot and drinking. He wanted to drink until the tea lost its taste to verify his guess. How persistent was he? A persistent man was very cute. Even though he was a little darker, thinner and shorter. Duo nodded repeatedly. So it was not that the tea could be brewed continuously. It was because the tea was good. As for why he could not sleep, he would know at night. Leader Simo Domo used to have tea before, but he never let me drink it. He treated it like a treasure. Is it not as good as your tea? Duo recalled something and drank another sip. He felt better. The leader did not let him drink before, but now he could drink it. Zhang Xiaobao continued to pour water for him. Yes, the tea that Simo Domo drank was fermented black tea. If it was the tea that he got 20 years ago, he could not bear to drink it. Now it is not bad. What we drank was green tea. Even if he kept the black tea for 20 years, it would not be as valuable as our tea now. Because no one would bring good black tea here. The good tea was sold in Great Tang. Anyway, you don't know how to drink it, so it would be a waste to give it to you. Duo sighed. He knew that Zhang Xiaobao was telling the truth, but it was really a blow. He wanted to know the value of the tea, so he asked, how much salt can it be exchanged for? Zhang Xiaobao was speechless. Wang Wan smiled. Did they have to use salt to calculate the value of everything? The pot of tea that we drank is enough for 126 of you to eat for half a year, including the cost of transporting it. Zhang Xiaobao kindly gave a rough estimate. Duo rubbed his stomach and said, I can still drink it. If I continue to brew it, it will lose its taste. You can still drink it tomorrow. We brought a lot of tea, Zhang Xiaobao kindly advised. Duo firmly said, brew it. After thinking for a while he asked, if Simo Domo did not work with the Arabs to fight Great Tang, would I not have met you? A smile appeared on Zhang Xiaobao's face. After a pause he said, you were too close to Great Tang. You didn't use this area very well. It's just that if we met in that situation, we wouldn't know if we were friends or foes. Forget it, there are no ifs. Duo understood. No matter what Simo Domo chose, the Tang would eventually come. It was just like how a large tribe would eventually occupy a small tribe. It's good that you came. Drink some tea. Duo rubbed his stomach and felt that he could drink again. So he signaled to Zhang Xiaobao to pour some tea for him. The next morning, everyone else was very energetic, but Duo's eyes were a little bloodshot. Even after washing his face with cold water 3 times, he was still in a daze. He finally understood why one could not drink too much tea. Yesterday, he was the only one drinking tea. Afterward, he felt a little dizzy and returned to his tent. Before lying down, his head hurt a little. He wanted to sleep, but when he lay down, he found that he could not. He still had a headache. After some time, his head no longer hurt, but he still could not sleep. Thinking and thinking, he finally fell asleep in a daze. But just as he closed his eyes, someone came to wake him up for breakfast. After washing his face 3 times and drinking a bowl of porridge, Duo felt a little better. He advised Zhang Xiaobao, who had finished breakfast first and was drinking tea with a small pot. You can't drink too much tea. It will make you feel guilty, and then you won't be able to sleep. Thank you for reminding me. I changed to a small pot. Zhang Xiaobao thanked Duo very seriously. The one with redder eyes than Duo was Simo Domo, who did not drink tea yesterday, and also did not rest well. When he woke up in the morning, he did not eat. He simply washed up, and brought 25 people to the great Tang camp. He was led to see Zhang Xiaobao in Wangwan. Along the way, he smelled the porridge. When he saw Zhang Xiaobao, he also smelled the faint fragrance of tea. His stomach growled. Leader Simo Domo, have you thought about what you want to compete? Zhang Xiaobao asked very kindly. He even took a small tea bowl and poured tea for Simo Domo. Simo Domo first nodded his head and expressed his thanks. Then he said, I've thought it through. 3. 2 wins. Chapter 1338. Alright, best of 3. What's the content? Zhang Xiaobao asked casually. Simo Domo was not as relaxed as Zhang Xiaobao. He raised a finger and said, climbing. Let's see who can climb faster. Duo suddenly said, there's a cliff with water below. Will we climb there? Yes, that's it. Simo Domo finally smiled. He felt that his men were familiar with the terrain. Zhang Xiaobao blinked and asked, what about the second one? Swimming. Swimming under the water. Let's see who can swim further. Simo Domo had been staring at Zhang Xiaobao. He wanted to see Zhang Xiaobao's expression. Zhang Xiaobao blinked again and asked, what about the third one? Simo Domo, who did not see anything, raised a third finger and said, throwing dice. Zhang Xiaobao was finally stunned. He seemed to be very surprised. People from the Indian region knew how to play dice? He asked, how do we play? Dice. Simo Domo was satisfied. He finally saw Zhang Xiaobao's expression change. He smiled and said, haha, it's simple. 3 dice, from 3 to 18. Throw them into a bowl. Whoever gets the highest number wins. Alright. But I want to see the dice first. Have the rules for the other 2 been decided? The simplest one is that during the competition, can we attack each other? Zhang Xiaobao asked. He was afraid that Xiaobei would not be able to win against the adults underwater. What Simo Domo was thinking was that if they could attack each other, and the other party used guns, wouldn't they die before they could do anything? He shook his head and said, we can't attack. We can only worry about ourselves. Alright, we'll start in the afternoon. I'll choose the people. Zhang Xiaobao agreed without hesitation. The competition that the other party suggested was beneficial to his side. If they were to compete in hand-to-hand combat, it would be very easy for his people to be in danger. If they were to play a game of fighting alone with a pack of wolves, he would have to admit defeat. Otherwise, people would really die. Simo Domo left happily. He went back to prepare and sleep first. Zhang Xiaobao found Xiaobei and told her to compete with him in diving and swimming. Xiaobei was very excited. She nodded vigorously in agreement and began to prepare the tools. She realized that the rules did not say that she could not bring an airbag down. Su Yilong also took this opportunity to find Xiao Yuan. When they reached the place, she wanted to fulfill the promise of the competition. She wanted Xiao Yuan to find a place with good scenery, so that the 2 of them could compose a poem. Xiao Yuan wasn't afraid at all. She said that after the competition with the locals in the afternoon, if it didn't rain at night, they could look at the scenery as the sun set. Zhang Xiaobao estimated the time, ate some meat, and lay down to sleep. He also sent people to the cliff to see how deep the water was, and whether there were any shallow reefs. He didn't want to accidentally fall to his death. The pool where Xiaobei was going to compete in diving also had to be checked. If there were big water snakes or other water monsters, Xiaobei might not be able to handle them. In the end, when Zhang Xiaobao woke up in the afternoon, the people who went to report that the cliff and the lake were the same place. The water was very clean and deep. There were big fish in it, but they couldn't dive too deep. There were water plants. Hence, Xiaobei brought 2 small knives with her to cut the water plants. Zhang Xiaobao deliberately went to the toilet. He didn't eat lunch, and only drank some soup to adjust his body to its best condition. The group of people came to the lake where Seymour Demoga's tribe was. Seymour Demoga had also woken up and brought people to welcome them. Everyone in the tribe had basically gathered. Only those who were farther away, like Duo, didn't know the news. Anyway, Seymour Demoga didn't care. Everyone already understood that the 3 bets today would affect their fate. If they won, they would have good days and no longer have to worry about salt. If they lost, they would have to work for others. Moreover, they didn't know what would happen in the future. What shall we compete in first? Zhang Xiaobao looked up at the cliff. On the west side of the lake, there was a cliff. The bottom of the cliff was hollowed out by the water. On the east side, there was a mountain that extended into the water. The bottom of the mountain was also hollowed out, but it wasn't as serious as the west side. Zhang Xiaobao knew at a glance that a river had once passed by, and it was a very big river. It formed a canyon, and then turned into a lake. The west side was affected by the Earth's rotation, so the impact of the water was stronger. There was no way to know the specific changes, but the local scenery was indeed very good, especially the lake. It was suitable for farming and raising fish and prawns. After completely occupying it in the future, he had to build a beautiful restaurant with a polo field, a football field, a table tennis court, and all kinds of football fields. Water polo couldn't be left out. The more he thought about it, the more Zhang Xiaobao felt that the future was better. For a moment, he began to design the layout according to the scenery in front of him. Let's compete in dice first, Zhang Xiaobao. Seymour Demoga's voice interrupted Zhang Xiaobao's thoughts. Yes, we can also build a casino. Zhang Xiaobao clapped his hands and said happily. Then he turned his head and looked at Seymour Demoga. Okay, dice. Are you ready? Seymour Demoga nodded and brought Zhang Xiaobao to the front of his courtyard. There was a place that looked like a square. It seemed to be used for some kind of ceremony. There were a few people in the tribe wearing clothes that were of good quality. They were fine linen and had color. They stood beside a bowl. Zhang Xiaobao understood that they were witnesses. They were afraid that he would go back on his word. He nodded to Duo and Wang Wan. The 2 of them also stood over. Looking at the bowl, Wang Wan praised. Not bad, it's made of ivory. Then she said to Duo, your tribe doesn't lack good things. Duo looked at Seymour Demoga with anger in his eyes. You use ivory things, but no one cares if my children starve to death. Seymour Demoga didn't have the mood to care about Duo. His attention was focused on Zhang Xiaobao. He waved his hand, and someone brought over a box with beautiful carvings. He opened the box, and there were a few dice inside. He signaled to Zhang Xiaobao. Zhang Xiaobao looked at them. The dice were also made of ivory. It was the same as the ones used in Tang. There were 6 sides, and the number of points was the same. So he took out the dice one by one and weighed them in his hand. In the end, he picked out 3 that were about the same weight. They felt good. It seemed that they were often played with. Let me try a few throws. After Zhang Xiaobao finished speaking, he didn't wait for Seymour Demoga's agreement. He picked up a dice and threw it into the bowl. He took it out and changed to another one. He did the same 3 times. Then he threw 2 pairs of dice into the bowl. In the end, he threw 3 dice together. Okay, let's start. Who's going first? Zhang Xiaobao threw a few rounds and asked Seymour Demoga. Seymour Demoga didn't say anything. He also took the dice. Like Zhang Xiaobao, he tried it. Compared to Zhang Xiaobao's casual manner, his hands were sweaty. After thinking for a while, he said to Zhang Xiaobao, you go first. Best of 3 wins. Okay. Zhang Xiaobao happily agreed. He took the dice and wiped them on a white cotton cloth. He weighed them. The 3 dice lined up in a row in Zhang Xiaobao's palm. Zhang Xiaobao's flat hand suddenly flipped, and the 3 dice spun into the bowl. There was some distance between each dice, and they didn't collide with each other. After they spun a few rounds in the bowl, and were about to stop at the bottom of the bowl, there was a slight contact. When they stopped, 3 sixes appeared in the bowl. The spectators looked at the 3 sixes in astonishment. Then they looked up at Zhang Xiaobao. Zhang Xiaobao's expression was indifferent. When he met Wang Wan's gaze, there was a hint of embarrassment. This was because he had cheated. Normally, when throwing dice, one couldn't make the dice rotate around a single point. That way, one could easily grasp the state of the dice when they stopped. Moreover, although it looked like he was throwing them together, there was a sequence to prevent them from colliding. But people nowadays didn't pay attention to this, so he cheated to bully others. Of course, he first had to have a strong foundation. Otherwise, even if he knew the theory, he wouldn't be able to throw it. Simo Damoka didn't know that there was such a trick. When he used it against Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan, his hands would be chopped off. In an instant he was sweating all over. The sweat on his forehead gathered together and dripped down his temples and eyebrows. He knew that what he saw was definitely not a coincidence. 3 sixes. Why did he choose this kind of game? He had met an expert. Simo Damoka, please. Zhang Xiaobao gestured with his hand. Simo Damoka used his sleeves to wipe his sweat and rubbed his hands on his body. He trembled as he picked up the dice in the bowl. He put his hands together and shook them while chanting. When he opened his hands again, the 3 dice hit each other in the ivory bowl and made a crisp sound. When he stopped, it was 4-5-3. The spectators in the tribe were disappointed. They felt that their leader wasn't performing well. Usually when he threw, he would always throw a big number. 6-6-6-6 was also possible. Zhang Xiaobao picked up the dice again. Just like before, he gently shook it twice. The 3 dice faced up and lined up in a row. There was a gap in the middle. He then continued to throw. This time, there was finally a deviation. The dice in the bowl were 6-6-4. Zhang Xiaobao smacked his lips. I missed. The last bit of hope in Simo Damoka's heart disappeared. He confirmed with Zhang Xiaobao that he was not stupid. When he picked up the die again, his hands were trembling even more. His whole body was trembling as well. With a crash, when the die came to a stop, he swayed a few times and gasped for breath. Only then did he not collapse. He then looked at Zhang Xiaobao and laughed. He. I also got 6-6-4. Congratulations. Zhang Xiaobao didn't care at all. He did the same thing as before. He waved his hands and the dice stopped. 6-6-6-6. He said to Simo Damoka. Please. Simo Damoka reached out to take the dice. Suddenly, he raised his left hand and grabbed his left chest. His face was pale, his eyes were wide open, and his mouth was open. His body slowly fell. Ugh! His psychological quality is too bad. Quick, doctor, take a look. Don't let him die. Zhang Xiaobao knew what was going on. Was there a need to be so nervous? It was just a competition. A doctor immediately came over and listened to his heartbeat. He took his pulse and opened Simo Damoka's mouth. He let him sit there and took out a nitroglycerin tablet and put it under his tongue. After waiting for a while, Simo Damoka's face finally returned to normal. His lips were no longer purple, but his eyes were still hollow. Zhang Xiaobao looked at Simo Damoka's state and was in a dilemma. He wanted to remind him that he hadn't thrown the dice yet, but he was afraid that if he said that, his eyes would roll back. Chapter 1339. What did you feed me just now? Seymour Duomo waited for a while before he regained his senses. The first thing he thought of was not gambling, but something that could save his life. Zhang Xiaobao could understand this, and at the same time, he was not afraid of revealing his secret. He explained, it's a type of medicine. At first, the people who made this medicine wanted to use it to help with explosives. Later, it was used in war. For example, the weapons we are using now contain this thing. But at the same time, it can also save people. The effect is very good, like what you are doing now. But let me tell you the truth. Your illness is not that simple. Otherwise, the doctor would have given you the quick-acting heart rescue pill, and not the nitroglycerin tablets. Did you suffer from the same illness in the past? The doctor's methods are very good. Seymour Duomo did not really understand, but he knew that the Tang dynasty's medical skills were very good, whether it was killing or saving people. He was now worried about what Zhang Xiaobao said. He did suffer in the past. Could it be that he was in a very dangerous situation now? Zhang Xiaobao also thought so. He did not know why the doctor gave Seymour Duomo nitroglycerin and not the heart rescue pill, because nitroglycerin was cheap. The heart rescue pill needed to be added with other medicines, and the cost was high. It was not worth it to use it on outsiders. As for these Chinese medicine formulas, both Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan easily obtained them. Wang Wan's family background was there, while Zhang Xiaobao's was simple. He just had to go overseas. The formulas that were kept secret in the country had to be told honestly when they were sold overseas. Some formulas even had to be told about the process. This was because the foreigners would doubt if there were any harmful substances in the production process. At the same time, the taboos and side effects were written very clearly. It was unlike in China. When you read the instructions, the taboos and side effects would be unknown or not clear. At that time, it really scared the people in China for a while. Later, when the internet was developed and basic education in English was available, everyone jumped over the wall to look for information. No one knew if this was the misfortune or luck of the smart people. Conflicts were everywhere. Zhang Xiaobao could even obtain additional benefits in this kind of struggle. As long as he used some small tricks, he would be able to obtain many secret recipes. Then, he could change his appearance and take them out to swindle money. Then, they would work together with the local drug dealers to increase the price of medicinal herbs. Now was the time for him and Wang Wan to play their roles. In other words, the two of them had been playing their roles all along. They had saved a lot of detours. From the production of nitroglycerin to its application, the process had been smooth. Not a single person had died. It was very miraculous. They had to thank those who had died before. Right now, Seymour Domo and Zhang Xiaobao were not clear about the specifics of the situation. The doctor, who was clear about the situation, was very clear about the cost of the heart-saving pill and the things that could be used as explosives. Furthermore, he was also clear that when the heart-saving pill was not effective, he had to eat explosives. The explosives worked quickly. Therefore, Zhang Xiaobao and Seymour Domo both felt that Seymour Domo was about to die. If his illness acted up again in the future, he would definitely not be able to survive. Zhang Xiaobao felt that if Seymour Domo was willing to lead his tribe to serve him, he could always provide him with medicine and tell him what to pay attention to, just like how he treated Li Longji and his family. Seymour Domo felt that if Zhang Xiaobao could prevent him from dying, there was nothing wrong with leading the tribe to follow him. If he died, would the tribe still listen to him? Thinking of this, Seymour Domo stood up again, took the dice, and casually threw it into the bowl. When the dice stopped, the numbers 1, 1, 2, 3, and 3 appeared. I lost this round, Seymour Domo said calmly. Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan understood. The two of them looked at each other and saw joy and sadness in each other's eyes. They were happy that they had taken down the tribe, but sad that a leader had lost his will to fight and betrayed not only himself. In the face of life and death, Seymour Domo had lost. Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan knew each other very well. If the other was the leader now, they would definitely fight to the last moment. Even if they lost, they would not let the other side look down on them. Thus, they would fight for more benefits. Leader Seymour Domo, what's the second round? Zhang Xiaobao did not cheer and asked very calmly. You say. Seymour Domo was also very straightforward. His meaning was very clear. They would compete in whichever one you felt had the greatest chance of winning. Zhang Xiaobao looked up at the cliff. Xiao Bei, who was beside him, quickly said, "Let's compete in diving. Let me do it. I haven't swum to my heart's content in a long time. Let me do it." Okay, let's compete in diving. Let's see who can swim further. Zhang Xiaobao agreed. Seymour Domo was in a difficult position. He thought that Zhang Xiaobao's side would have a very strong person, but he did not expect that it would be a little girl. They would definitely lose. When the time came, they would win by climbing the cliff. They had the salt, but where was the medicine? Actually, it's diving. Zhang Xiaobao did not let Seymour Domo finish his sentence. Seymour Domo sighed secretly. He looked at the person beside him and gave him a lot of hints. The person he was hinting at nodded vigorously. Only then did he let out a sigh of relief. The two sides began to change their clothes. Xiao Bei wore a very large set of clothes, while the tribesman only wore a small pocket around his waist. If his opponent was not a girl, he probably would not have given up on such a cumbersome thing. The two stood by the lake. With Zhang Xiaobao's order, they both dove into the water at the same time. As soon as they entered, they disappeared. After a while, the people on the shore could vaguely see a blurry thing moving forward under the water. Time passed slowly. Sweat appeared on Seymour Domo's forehead again. He hated that he could not personally jump into the water and catch the tribesman. He had hinted just now, but he did not expect that this idiot would think that he was asking him to persist. You persisted until the end. How much longer can I persist? Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan began to look at their watches. 3 minutes had passed. The two could not help but worry. They were not worried about Xiao Bei, but the other party. They could no longer see the figure under the water. It was too far away. After waiting for another minute, a head finally appeared on the surface of the water in front of them. Seeing this head, Seymour Domo did not know whether to be happy or sad. He did not wait for the other head. If that head did not appear, would Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan kill all the tribesmen in his tribe? That was their sister. At this moment, everyone felt that time was passing very slowly. It was as if they could hear their own heartbeat. Every beat was very clear. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the surface of the lake. 2 long minutes passed just like that. Just as Seymour Domo was about to send a few more people over to take a look, Xiao Bei's head finally appeared from a further place. She then placed her hands in front of her chest and treaded on the water as she walked back. From her upper body, it could be seen that she had taken off her bloated outer clothes. Inside, she was wearing a swimsuit. The tribesmen looked at Xiao Bei, who was treading on the water, as if they were looking at Buddha. She had been underwater for so long, but she was actually fine and came back alive. As she got closer, Xiao Bei did not show any joy on her face. Instead, the corners of her mouth turned downwards. She looked very unhappy as she opened and closed her eyes. When she got closer to the shore, the tribesmen on the shore were shocked. Xiao Bei's hands under her chest were digging into the eyes of a fish. That fish did not look small. Zhang Xiaobao quickly waded into the water to help. It was a carp. Zhang Xiaobao weighed it twice and estimated that it was around 12 to 3 caddies. If he was in the water, he would not touch it unless his head was out of the water. Such a big fish would kill him. After throwing the fish back with all his strength, Zhang Xiaobao carried his sister and said, "Amazing." Xiao Bei whispered into his brother's ear, "I don't feel any sense of accomplishment at all. I thought he was very powerful, but in the water his speed was so slow. I didn't even need to take a breath before I ran in front of him, leaving him far behind. By the time I needed to take a breath, I was already a long way away from the surface of the water. If I had known, I would not have cheated. That would have been faster. Even if he held his breath for 10 minutes, what was the use if he could not swim the distance? I felt that this was very unfair to him, so I took a few breaths and caught a fish. Brother, don't you think it's amazing? There are carps here too. It's amazing. In the future, we will not cheat when we deal with him. Where is the thing?" Zhang Xiaobao replied softly. "It sank with the heavy object. I used up my qi. If we still have to bring the heavy object back, how are we going to get the fish? Let's make fish soup tonight. 1 fish is enough for us to drink." Xiao Bei still had a look of regret on her face. She had overestimated her opponent. On the shore, Shima Duomo's eyes revealed happiness, but his face was full of pain. He glanced at his tribesmen and shouted, "We have lost. I know that all of you think the same as me and are unwilling to leave here, but we have to abide by our oath. We have lost the bet. From today onwards, we will follow the Tang people. We have to go to dangerous places, but we do not lack warriors. I believe that the places that the Tang people can go to will not be difficult for us. Now, I want to ask the Tang people if they are willing to abide by the bet and provide us with enough salt in the days that we follow them." As he shouted, Shima Duomo looked at Zhang Xiaobao. Zhang Xiaobao immediately cooperated and shouted, "We are willing. Did you hear that? Although we have lost some things, we have also gained some things. Now go back and take the useful tools at home. Don't not come back. That is against the bet. Buddha will punish you. I will send troops to catch you back." Shima Duomo shouted at the people around him again. Except for the original people on his side, those who came later immediately turned around and left to get the things. Zhang Xiaobao looked at Shima Duomo's confident look and could guess what was going on. The important materials were in the hands of Shima Duomo. If those people did not come back, once they lost the resources here, they would have a hard time in the future. They might even die because of lack of things. Zhang Xiaobao really admired Shima Duomo. He could hide the idea of surrendering so deeply and speak of it so openly. If he did not consider his illness, but really knew the gap between his tribe and the Tang Empire, and thus gave up his independence, he was really great. Someone in the crowd on the shore was not satisfied and said to the person next to him, "Is it over? What about our competition?" "Now is fine," Xiao Yuan said to Su Yilong. Chapter 1340. Su Yilong and the 9 little guys did not participate. They stayed by the lake, looking at the mountain, the water, and the cliff hanging upside down. "Are we not waiting for the sunset?" Su Yilong's body trembled as she asked Xiao Yuan. He was excited. He had been suppressed all the way and never had the chance to show off his ability. He was always looking at the 9 little guys' performance. At this moment, he felt that he finally got a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He would defeat Xiao Yuan first, and then defeat them one by one. Xiao Yuan looked up at the sun and quickly closed his eyes, saying, "We're not waiting. Maybe we'll be busy with other things later. Right now this mountain, this water, this warm sun, and the slowly floating clouds. Of course, if you pick up a fish and write about it, it's fine too. Last question, is it writing modern poetry?" "What modern poetry?" Su Yilong did not understand. "Brother and sister will write it occasionally. It's a modern poetry written strictly according to the standard requirements. It's divided into 5 or 7 words. The standard poems and quatrains are different according to the beginning and end of the cycle. For example, no need, we're not writing this. The rules are too strict and affect our performance. Writing poetry is not about rules. It's about expressing one's inner feelings, understand?" Su Yilong was confused and quickly interrupted Xiao Yuan, saying with a guilty conscience. Xiao Yuan followed the good advice. "Okay, not following the rules. Writing poetry can express one's feelings. Isn't it the same if it's written in vernacular? It's like a newspaper story." "Yes, it's the same. But don't you think that poetry can better reflect one's literary level?" "Beauty knowledge," Su Yilong advised. "Isn't modern poetry more beautiful? Is it more knowledgeable?" Xiao Yuan continued. "Let's not think about this today, okay? Let's talk about poetry. I'll go first. Do you see that cliff?" Su Yilong also knew that she could not win against Xiao Yuan on the same topic, because she used double standards. So she quickly changed the topic. Xiao Yuan looked in the direction Su Yilong pointed and nodded. "I see it. There's a depression below." "Very good, the poem is out. The first sentence, I see the cliff is depressed. The second sentence, why? We're leaving." Xiao Bei's voice suddenly sounded. She stared at Su Yilong unhappily. "Are you playing with us? I can follow up with your question. Why is there a groove? When I turn my head to look at the other side, there is also a groove there." "Haha, Xiao Bei, you're so cute. I'm just kidding. I'm not done yet. Wait, let's start. The water surface is boundless, reflecting the cliff. The mountains and ridges are hard to stop the rushing current. The movement and stillness are in harmony with the quiet and distant." After Su Yilong finished speaking, she looked at the 9 little guys and waited. After waiting for a while, seeing that they did not respond, she asked, "How is it?" "To be honest, I don't know what it means." Xiao Bei pouted and said to Su Yilong, "Yes, you are still young and can't understand so deeply. It's my fault." Su Yilong was helpless and had to apologize to the 9 children. "Actually, it's not your fault. Let Lil Yuan do it. Lil Yuan, tell us a jingle. It has to be like a nursery rhyme." Lil Bei revealed a big smile to Su Yilong and instructed Lil Yuan. Xiao Yuan nodded and looked at the surrounding scenery. She raised her hand and pointed. The birds on the trees are chirping, and the water flowing under the trees is splashing. The fish and shrimp swam and swam until they reached the end of the cliff. There were vines halfway up the mountain, and green grass was sprouting. "Can those wild vegetables be eaten? We have to dig them up." Hee hee, it's really nice. Lil Yuan, you're not bad. Continue to work hard, and you'll be very powerful in the future. After listening to the nursery rhyme made by Xiao Yuan, Su Yilong felt that it was very difficult for such a big child to be able to write the rhyme. She quickly praised him and looked like a teacher. Her smile was so reserved and conceited. Xiao Yuan smiled shyly, then pointed to the tree and said, "The birds on the trees are chirping, and they complain about the world when they reach the top of the mountain. Chun Xian's hair is frosty and she's young. She's like a destroyed king, and she's killed in battle. She's like a gentleman, and she's worshipping the temple. My song Ru Feng always praises, and she's like a poem." Su Yilong was stunned when she heard it. She just felt that it was not easy for a child to write the rhyme. But in the blink of an eye, he started to use the rhyme. Moreover, it ran through the book of songs and praised the elegance. It was about a woman in a family who supported the family business on her own. Every time she reached the top of the mountain, she would complain about the long journey. There were elders and children in the family, and her husband was ordered to kill in the flames of war. This was fighting together with the king in order to open up new territory. Whether it was her song or your wind, they were praises. Was it a rhyme? This was actually called life. Using rolling ears, Rufun, Zhanbei Luo Yi, Wu Yi, Wu, and Guanzi. Was this kind of ability something a child could have? Now that they were going to take the imperial examination and advancement examination, it was really easy to solve the questions. It was too demoralizing. This rhyme is better than the previous one. Brother Yilong, don't you think so? Xiao Yuan continue. I like to listen to rhymes the most. I don't understand any poems. Xiaobei's voice was still so sweet, and her smile was still bright. Su Yilong looked at the rippling lake in front of her that was blown by the wind. She really wanted to jump in and never come up again. It was so embarrassing. She even wanted to show off in front of Xiao Yuan. She finally came up with 4 lines, but Xiao Yuan used the rhyme right away. This was an impromptu poem. No one gave you time to think about it one by one. It tested not only your quick wit, but also your foundation. How was it possible? Su Yilong felt that she was a failure, especially when she heard what Xiaobei said. Why was the usually cute smile so awkward at this moment? Yes, I don't understand poems, let alone compose them. The only thing Su Yilong could do was to agree with Xiaobei and return a smile. But no matter how she smiled, it was unnatural. Xiao Yuan's expression did not change much. Just like before, she pointed at the big tree again. The birds on the tree chirped. Looking up, the warm sun set in the east. Wild vegetables grow in the remote jungle, and new melons grow in the fertile soil of the hometown. Tianxing Ming crossed 1,000 rivers, and dreamt of the 100 Gorge last night, singing nursery rhymes softly, sleeping early, and smiling like a flower in auspicious times. I miss home too. Auspicious times and auspicious times can call people, right? No, we can't come here for nothing. We have to find more things that can't be seen in the capital, and make them into specimens to bring back for our brothers and sisters to see. Are there any gems here? I don't know if they broke the pearls that I dropped last time. When Xiaobei heard Xiao Yuan's words, her eyes turned red. She sniffled and pulled Xiao Yuan along as she ran towards the place where Simo Domo lived. She felt that it was best to ask the local leader first. If there were any, they could use other seasonings to exchange for them. After all, the locals were stupid and could not eat gems. If they gave them something real, they would definitely be very happy. The 9 little guys ran to find Simo Domo and made a fair exchange with him. Su Yilong stood by the lake for a long time without moving. She understood what Xiao Yuan meant. She started with the same scenery and used 3 ways to tell him what it meant to go from simple to complex, and from complex to simple. There was no need for rhyme in the depths of love. Every word came from the heart. Using the simplest words to express the deepest meaning, this was the realm. As for herself, she was still in the process of going from simple to complex. She had not entered the stage of complexity. One day, she would use illusion and deliberately carve words and sentences to see Xiao Yuan's footsteps. Perhaps Xiao Yuan was still a little far from the truth, but he didn't need to carve anything. He said what he thought. It seemed like a habit, but it was actually accumulated to a certain extent. Su Yilong once again felt the terror of the 9 children of the Zhang family and Wang family. It seemed that her grandfather was right to send her over. Otherwise, she would still be flattering each other with the other officials of the same generation. She would be proud and complacent when she did something. Looking at the 9 little guys, they did a lot of things. When they met many tribes, they could immediately take the children to play and take good care of them. When she saw them every day, she felt that they were very happy. Of course, when she saw them happy, she was also happy. But thinking about it carefully, she realized that the places where they played every day were places where they were needed. When someone was sick or the work was not easy to do, they would immediately go over and help as if they were playing and chatting with the others. In other words, they took on the task of adjusting the atmosphere in the team. They had been infecting everyone with their happiness and innocence. They would also fall down and accidentally get scratched, looking at them pouting and saying that it didn't hurt. The adults who were also injured seemed to feel that they didn't hurt, even if their injuries were more serious than the children. They can actually play a role in stabilizing the hearts of the troops and improving morale. They have never been a burden to the team. They never made others worry. Why did I only find out? Su Yilong said to himself in the lake. Then he was very annoyed. He thought that he was the only one who was useless. He couldn't do physical work, he didn't know how to cook, he couldn't bring happiness to others, and he didn't have the affinity that Xiaobei and the others had with the tribe's children. Damn! I'm actually a good-for-nothing. No, I have to follow and learn. Su Yilong strengthened his confidence. He was full of yearning for the outside world. He came to a conclusion. Once he followed the team to the end of this journey, he would learn 1,000th of the strengths of everyone in the team. When he went back and met the other officials of the same generation, those people would not be a threat to him. Just like Xiao Yuan's indifferent look when he was pulled away by Xiaobei after he finished his last poem. Xiaobei didn't take him seriously at all. It was really depressing. Chief Seymour Domo, where are you? Seymour Domo! Xiaobei and the others shouted. They were brought to the hall where Seymour Domo had invited Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan. Chief Seymour Domo, I see you again. Hello, what's that? I heard that you have a white jade beauty. When Xiaobei saw him, he first spoke with his hands behind his back and his feet moved. Chapter 1341. Xiaobei, come here. Where's Su Yilong? Without waiting for Xiaobei to finish, Wang Wan shouted first, then stared at Zhang Xiaobao. Zhang Xiaobao seemed to be very wronged and said, "There's only one sentence. The content is different. Don't you think this sentence is very domineering? I think it's very hooligan. It's the prelude to taking advantage of others. Xiaobei, why did you run over?" Wang Wan said to Zhang Xiaobao and hugged Xiaobei, who ran over. Xiaobei looked at Simo Domo He and said to his sister, "It's all Xiao Yuan's fault. It would have been better to compete with Su Yilong in poetry, but he had to suppress her. He also had to choose the theme of homesickness, which made me homesick. Then I thought Ji Xiang Rui and the others can leave, right? They can call for help, right? I remember when I was young, I had such a big pearl and put it in the house. When I go back, should I bring them a bigger pearl? If they really can't find a big pearl, gemstones and the like will do. Naturally, I have to ask Leader Simo Domo He. I won't ask for it for free. We can use our ancestral secret seasonings to exchange. 13 spices. Usually we can't bear to eat it. For example, when they eat barbecued meat, we can put some. Brother." The latter part of the sentence was directed to Zhang Xiaobao. Zhang Xiaobao nodded solemnly. Yes, the ancestral 13 spices. If they are willing to take out more things to show their sincerity, 18 spices is also fine. It's easy to eat curry. While they were talking, Xiao Yuan and the others had already started to communicate with Simo Domo He. Simo Domo He could speak the Tang language, so there was no problem in communication. I know my brother is the best. Of course my sister is also good. 18 spices? Why didn't I know? Xiaobei whispered to his brother and sister. That's because your brother has never used seasonings that are 13 spices, let alone 18 spices. Those are for people who don't know how to cook. Look at the chefs in our restaurant. Which one of them would grind seasonings into powder and add them to their dishes. Also, I asked you to teach Su Jian's grandson something. Look at how you bullied him. Can't you let him have some self-confidence? Wang Wan also said in a low voice. Xiao Bei pouted. It's not that we're bullying him. It's just that he wants to gain confidence in his poetry through Xiao Yuan. If he were to look for me, wouldn't there not be so much trouble? How stupid was he? Using one's own shortcomings to attack the enemy's strengths. So it's not that we bullied him, but that he didn't succeed in bullying little Yuan. Yes, it's all his fault. It's fine. People get used to it after a few more blows. Don't ask Seymour Demoga for anything. He is also a poor man. If you want gems, you can find jadeite in the places we pass by on our way here. Now is a good time. I think we can find jadeite the size of a house. Zhang Xiaobao could imagine how big of a blow Su Yilong had suffered. Not to mention her. Even he and Cuckoo sometimes had to memorize the information for their younger brother, little Yuan. When they needed to use it, they would ask him. 1% of talent was too powerful, and 99% of hard work could not make up for it. Of course, according to another theory, 100% of children had their own talent. It depended on the environment and the guidance of the adults. The simplest example was when a child was born. The right side of the brain was better developed. He used to use chopsticks with his left hand, but he was forced to use chopsticks with his right hand. Every time his left hand touched the chopsticks, he would hit it. After a long time, the child would not only change the hand that held the chopsticks, but it would also form a conditioned reflex to suppress the use of the right side of his brain. Then the parents would say that their child was stupid. Was there any reason? Xiao Bei did not consider whether Su Yilong's heart was hurt. She was most interested in places with jadeite. She had jadeite jewelry of various colors, mainly red and green. No matter how she looked at it, it was more beautiful than glass. Brother, it's a mine, right? Our precious candy house. It involves too many lives and interests. Behind the beauty of every gem, there is blood. We will occupy the place where jadeite is produced, but we must stay away from our precious candy house. You can give every child a big cake, but it's impossible to make a jade bracelet for every child. The sweetest thing is the honey pastry of our precious candy house. The happiest way to eat it is to taste it with family. This is the true meaning of our precious candy house. It's not that the most beautiful thing is the jade bracelet of our precious candy house. The easiest way to get it is to gamble on raw stones. Our precious candy house has lost its soul at the same time that it has lost its care for its children. We let you participate in the animal husbandry industry because you can get substantial things to help the children from this industry, such as milk and meat. The mining industry can't provide direct help to the children. It's nothing more than making money and then using the money to buy the things the children need. It seems to be the same thing, but it's actually a different concept. As the owner of the candy house, when you see something, the first thing you think of should be what this thing is for the children, not how much this thing can be sold for. Then, you use the money to buy things for the children. After a long time, you will only remember money, but forget the most direct needs of the children. Everything will start to be measured by money, understand? Zhang Xiaobao patiently explained to his sister that it involved the inertia and philosophy of human thinking. Xiao Bei blinked his big eyes and thought for a while. He nodded and said, I understand. It's like when I fell and hurt my arm. The first thing you and big sister thought of when you saw me was, does Xiao Bei hurt? Was the fall serious? Instead of hearing that little Bei fell, you estimated that it would cost 5 strings of cash to treat her. Go, get someone to get 7 strings of cash. A fallen little Bei doesn't just need money. Even if the former doesn't have money, it's still love. Even if the latter has money, it's still indifference. Of course, it's even better if there's money and love. Once we participate in the mining industry, our thoughts will gradually turn to money. Zhang Xiaobao picked up his sister and placed her on his lap. He kissed her hard and said, Moi, Aya, our little Bei is so smart. It can't be helped. She's always been smart. Who's as stupid as Su Yilong? 10 years. It'll probably take 10 years to catch up to the current little Yuan. If he starts practicing every day from now on and works hard to learn, 5 years might be possible. Little Bei patted her chest and deeply agreed with her brother's words. Wang Wan finally asked about the specific situation. What did Little Yuan do? Little Yuan let him know something about Buddhism, and something you guys talked about before. That is, seeing a mountain is a mountain, seeing water is water. Seeing a mountain is not a mountain, seeing water is not water. Seeing a mountain is a mountain, seeing water is water. According to what you guys said, the last one is to find it 1,000 times in the crowd. It was as if Xiao Bei had won the competition. He was overjoyed and delighted. Little Yuan is already so amazing? Wang Wan was a little surprised. She naturally knew what that was. 3 realms. In literature, very few people could reach the last realm. When you deliberately emphasized in writing, the reader would feel the beauty. When you didn't emphasize, the reader would forget the way you wrote, and only remember the plot. Zhang Xiaobao spoke at this time. He's not that amazing. Little Yuan doesn't have enough life experience. He can't understand many things thoroughly just by relying on the knowledge in books. His success this time is because he chose the topic of homesickness. Even children know how to miss. That's why he made Su Yilong suffer a blow. Little Yuan, right? Yes. My Little Yuan didn't write about the profundity of history. He simply expressed his longing for his younger brother and sister, because he's not stupid. Little Bei understood everything. That was why she said a jingle and a nursery rhyme to cooperate with Little Yuan. Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan looked at each other and stood up to walk out. Brother, where are you two going? Little Bei looked at Simo Domo when she asked. Didn't they want to discuss something with him? Zhang Xiaobao patted Little Bei's head. You guys talk to him. Your sister and I will take a look at Grandpa Su's grandson. Otherwise, when we go back and talk about it, I'm afraid your Grandpa Su will fall ill and be hospitalized. Okay, leave this to us. Little Bei agreed and ran to Simo Domo. Zhang Xiaobao just nodded at Simo Domo, and then walked out with Wang Wan. Simo Domo, who was sitting there, was angry. He felt that he was left out. He looked at the children in front of him, who were talking to him about a deal. He gritted his teeth, and decided with a hint of revenge, to get some benefits from the children. After that, if Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan didn't agree, he would return the benefits. If the two of them didn't say anything, he would take it that they agreed. Compared to Simo Domo's complicated thoughts, Little Bei and the others were much simpler. They didn't think about who would get how much. They only felt that according to the actual situation of the local poverty, they would use 13 incense to exchange for other people's good things. Moreover, they were experienced and knowledgeable, and could easily estimate the approximate value of each item. Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan, who were outside, didn't know what Simo Domo was thinking. Otherwise, they would have kindly advised him not to play this kind of game with Little Bei and the others. That way they would definitely be at a disadvantage. Not everyone could take advantage of the little guys. When the two of them found Su Yilong, they saw that Su Yilong was holding a basket that had just been carelessly woven with branches in one hand and a leek scythe in the other. The leek scythe was specially used to cut leeks. It was very easy to use. Once the scythe was cut, a bundle of leeks would fall. Moreover, it wouldn't hurt the roots. As long as you used your strength, it would definitely be a flat cut. The tool itself limited your normal movements, unless you deliberately cut in a crooked direction. When you encountered leeks with rotten roots, you could still dig downwards. With a gentle turn, the rotten roots would be dug out. Su Yilong was digging wild vegetables along the lake. When she encountered those that ate the top part, she would directly cut them. When she encountered those that ate the leaves, she would cut them close to the ground. When she encountered those that ate the roots, she would use the scythe to cut them out. For every wild vegetable, she would carefully shake off the soil, separate them, and carefully arrange them in the basket. What is he doing? Wang Wan looked at Su Yilong and realized that it was different from what she had thought before. She thought that Su Yilong should be sitting by the lake in a daze, listless. Zhang Xiaobao revealed a gratified smile. Digging wild vegetables. And then? Wang Wan asked. Then, she would comprehend life and settle down to do the little things around her, instead of looking at the clouds and fantasizing about flying. If Grandpa Su saw this, he would definitely be very happy. Zhang Xiaobao praised. So that's how it is. It seems that he isn't afraid of being shocked at all. He adjusted himself really quickly. Let's dig too. Boil the wild vegetables in boiling water, and dip them in sauce. Wang Wan suggested. Zhang Xiaobao picked the wild vegetables with her. After an hour, Seymour Duomo walked out of the hall, looking very tired. Then, there was an obvious dejected look. Xiao Bei and the others were still happily talking and laughing. It's over. Another person who has been shocked. I don't know if he can recover as quickly as the previous one. Zhang Xiaobao looked up, shook his head, and said to Wang Wan. I guarantee that he took the initiative to scheme against the little guys. Otherwise, it would be impossible. Wang Wan added. Chapter 1342. The sound of Xiao Bei's laughter woke up Su Yilong, who was digging for wild herbs by the lake. He looked up at the 9 happy little guys, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. There was a look of relief on his face. Zhang Xiaobao happened to see Su Yilong's appearance when he raised his head. At this time, Su Yilong was not as high-spirited as before when he was following the team. He looked very easygoing and natural. Zhang Xiaobao knew that this was a sublimation of thinking. When Su Yilong returned, he would be much higher than the others of his generation. In that case, he would have an explanation to old man Su Jian. At the same time, the Tang Empire would have one more useful talent, or a good official. Although the children nowadays were educated, and the requirements for students during the imperial examination were getting higher and higher, which seemed very fair. In fact, it could not offset the advantages of the official family. This was inevitable. The same situation existed in any country and era with the system, whether it was China, the United States, Japan, or Russia. One's family background had always played a very important role. Since he could not stop it, it was better to find a way to improve the personal quality of the official's children. If using a knife to cut off the water did not work, then adding fuel to the fire. Use the system to limit some of the power, and use the humanities to influence some of the officials. Even if there were still various kinds of corruption in the end, the number would naturally decrease. Try to improve the ability of the officials as much as possible, and at the same time ensure the relative income of the officials. Their salary must be in the upper class of society, and their welfare must be higher than ordinary people. Otherwise, they would be in a strong temptation. Yilong, how many wild vegetables have you dug? Zhang Xiaobao, who was in a good mood, waved to Su Yilong and shouted. Su Yilong slowly stood up, carrying a basket in one hand and a leek scythe in the other, and walked over. After a few steps, she tilted the basket so that Zhang Xiaobao could see the wild vegetables inside. She said, Not much, only half a basket. It's enough to boil soup for a few people. It's not enough to cook vegetables. Huh? Why is it different? Xiao Bei jumped twice and came in front of Su Yilong. It looked at her carefully from head to toe, and then looked at the wild vegetables in the basket with a curious look. Xiao Bei felt that the Su Yilong in front of her was like a different person compared to before. Her tone and actions gave her the feeling that she was calm, not deliberate or pretentious. Her gaze was no longer aggressive, but so gentle. You've changed so quickly. What are you doing? Teach me. You teach me how to change my expression. I'll teach you how to negotiate. I'm very good at negotiating. Xiao Bei nudged Su Yilong and said, I want to thank you all. Actually, I'm still me. It's just that I'm a little different after meeting you all. As for your skills, I must learn them. Even if I have to cook for you all every day, I must learn all of your skills. Otherwise, wouldn't I have come all this way for nothing? Su Yilong lifted the basket in her hand and said to Xiao Bei, meaning that she was going to cook today. Xiao Bei took a step back and waved his hand. No, let's learn from each other. As for cooking, please spare us. You're a good person. You can't torture us like this. But, we have a seasoning called 13 spices. It's still very good. If you don't believe me, you can ask Chief Simo Domohi. Xiao Bei smiled and looked at Simo Domohi. Simo Domohi's expression was not very good. During the negotiation just now, he did want to bully the little ones. He wanted to use an ivory bead to exchange for 50 kilograms of salt from Xiao Bei. His idea was very good. It was safer to exchange for the salt in his hands. Although they followed the Tang team and discussed before that there would be salt to eat, if one day they were angry, or if the whole team did not have enough salt, it would inevitably be a burden to the people in his tribe. He had some salt in his hands that could be used at critical moments. If the little ones could exchange for a few more ivory beads, he would have a lot of salt. He could dissolve it in water and drink it to make people feel strong. In the end, it was Xiao Bei and the others who asked what kind of seasonings they needed. He said that if they sold the salt directly, they would not sell it. They had to match it with seasonings. Therefore, the seasonings were expensive. He said that there were 18 kinds of seasonings, matching them with the salt one by one, then 2 by 2, 3 by 3, until there were 18 kinds of seasonings. In the end, there were 153 kinds of seasonings that were matched with the salt alone. Then, adding the 18 kinds of seasonings that were matched with the salt alone, it became 171 kinds of seasonings. Then he added 3 by 3, 4 by 4 and so on. He was confused, but there were a lot of them. After calculating, it was obvious that it was not possible. Simodomo, he was not stupid. He did not want to talk about other things, and only wanted to talk about salt. Xiao Bei and the rest of the 9 could not directly sell the salt. Although there was a lot of salt in the Tang, it was only useful if they carried it with them. Otherwise, if they did not eat salt, they would fall sick. They saw this point and used salt as the main condition to talk about other seasonings. This was because there were many seasonings in the area. Other than chili, many of the other seasonings grew well. Xiao Bei and the rest were puzzled. Why were there so many seasonings in the area? They did not know that if there were not so many varieties, their brothers and sisters could not eat curry every day in India. Even if they were imported, they had to take the climate into consideration. Therefore, it was said that the area itself was produced. Xiao Bei and the rest took out a few pieces of deer jerky for Simodomo he to taste. Deer jerky was made with a few kinds of seasonings. They could not carry any seasonings with them. The smell was too bad. After Simodomo he ate it, he felt that it was indeed not bad. When he heard Xiao Bei and the rest say that it would taste better with more seasonings, he could not help but be tempted. Xiao Bei and the rest struck while the iron was hot. They said that they could provide an unlimited amount of seasonings to Simodomo he and his people. As long as they could eat it, they would provide all they had, including salt. The prerequisite was that Simodomo, he also had to give all he had. Simodomo he was happy and said, "You can give me as much as I want." Xiao Bei said, "No, I want as much as you can eat. If you eat 1 jin of salt per person a day, I will give you 1 jin per person. If you can eat 2 jin, I will give you 2 jin." They went back and forth on this topic. Simodomo he was very tired. They had 9 people, but he was only 1. After an hour he agreed. When he agreed, he was in a good mood. He felt that he could hunt for ivory in the future, but he could not find seasonings and salt. Just as they were about to leave, Xiao Bei told him that there were seasonings in the area. If they wanted them, they had to send people to pick them. Then, there would be people in the group who would specially make them. They could eat as much as they wanted, but the prerequisite was that they had to pick them. If they did not pick them, it was fine. Their own group would pick them and provide seasonings. However, their own group would pick them, and the usual hunting of wild animals would be left to their tribesmen. Simodomo, he became depressed when he knew that there were seasonings in the area, and that his own people had to work for them. Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan saw his tired and depressed appearance. The 9 of them were, of course, happy because they still had a backup plan. They did not usually eat 13 spice, but it did not mean that 13 spice was worthless. There were many Tang people who did not eat much of it. If they continued to move forward and entered the territory of the man-eaters, they could still sell it to them. Besides, 13 spice or 18 spice, other than the influence of the season, there was also the secret recipe for processing. It was not that you would get 13 spice if you collected 13 kinds of plants. If the combination was not good, people would fall sick. There were things that were sun-dried and shade-dried, and special ones needed to be smoked. This was not told to Simodomo he, and it was not in the agreement. When the time came, they would collect the plants that were in the current season and process 10 portions. They would just give them 1 portion, and say that the processing process failed. Simo Domo he did not know, or else he would fall to the ground again. Nitroglycerin would not be able to save him. When he heard Xiaobei's words, Simo Domo he smiled at Su Yilong, but it was a forced smile. Su Yilong didn't even need to ask to know what was going on. She had heard too many legends about Xiaobei and the others when they were negotiating with others. She knew even more about 13 spice. Although it wasn't very cheap, it wasn't so expensive that it was unbearable. Even if an ordinary family did not eat it, they could buy a bag for a dozen copper coins and leave it at home. When guests came, they could cook it to enhance the taste. Just like tea leaves, that bag was enough to last them for half a month. Those who were slightly better off could eat it casually. Its biggest use was to cook meat. No matter how bad your cooking skills were, you could cook a chicken or some pork, put water in the pot, and add 13 spice. The taste would be good. Salt had to be added last. This was the current rule. If you added salt in advance, you would find that the same level of saltiness would require more salt. Unless it was specially made to make braised food, the salt had to be added first, and then it had to be soaked for a long time. At this time, Su Yilong was thinking about how Xiaobei bullied Simo Domo he with the 13 spice. Simo Domo he's condition was obviously not right. He had just fallen ill, and it was not easy. However, after seeing Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan, Seymour Duomo, who was in a bad mood, suddenly revealed a peaceful smile. He instantly understood that what was his might not necessarily be his. Since he was going with the Tang people, he still had many good things in his hands. What would happen? Why not take this opportunity to exchange with the 9 children? He thought that Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan would be happy to see that their younger siblings had more good things. You also know how to change your face. Xiaobei was about to show off his achievements when he suddenly realized that Simo Domo he's expression had also changed. He could not help but feel puzzled. Zhang Xiaobao smiled and said to Xiaobei, "They did not change their faces but their hearts. People know how to give and take, so they are open-minded. Pack up, and we will leave in 2 days." Oh, Xiaobei agreed, but he still did not understand what was going on. He realized that he could not figure it out at the moment, so he stopped thinking about it. He snatched the basket from Su Yilong's hand, grabbed one end, and passed the other end to Xiao Yuan. The two of them carried the basket and skipped towards the campsite. "Do you still need me to do anything?" Simo Domo he asked Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan. "Don't bring too many things, especially wooden tools that you don't usually use. Throw away what you need. When everyone is here, gather those who are sick together," Zhang Xiaobao said to Simo Domo he. Simo Domo he hesitated for a moment then nodded. "I know, kill those who are sick." "What did you say?" Zhang Xiaobao asked in surprise. Chapter 1343. Zhang Xiaobao was shocked, and his gaze towards Simo Domoka was no longer friendly. Simo Domoka didn't know what was going on, and was still explaining. "I said that I am willing to listen to your orders and kill the sick people." Don't say you'll listen to my orders. I'm not that heartless. If you were my enemy, I'd just be happy if you all died. But now you're my people and not my slaves," Zhang Xiaobao said firmly to Simo Domoka as he stared at him. Simo Domoka was stunned. Then why do you want me to gather the sick people? To treat them? Most of the people here are still young. They died because of illness or other problems. So those who are alive now don't have any serious illnesses. We have a medical team that can give you simple treatment. Not only the sick, but also your people. You all have to cut their hair and take a hot bath. I have medicine specially used for bathing. After that, change into new clothes. If you don't have new clothes, find a cloth to cover yourself. Zhang Xiaobao once again felt the cruelty of the slave system. This kind of disregard for life was even more thorough than his and Cuckoo's. He and Cuckoo had killed people, and he had used all kinds of methods to destroy the enemy. But that didn't mean that he didn't know how to respect life. He also felt uncomfortable when he killed people. He only did it for the benefit of the Tang Empire. There was no right or wrong. He had never said that he would torture people after they surrendered. Even if it was mining, he would give them enough food. He used the captives' physical strength, not their lives. The work they were doing was indeed dangerous, but that kind of danger was probabilistic. It was dangerous for anyone to do it, not just because of the captives. But the rulers of the slave system didn't treat slaves as people at all. They killed them so easily that it was no different from killing a chicken. It was no different from using boiling oil to feed a live donkey meat. Wang Wan also frowned. She had never thought that her hands were clean. If a soldier didn't have blood on his hands, what kind of soldier was he? He had also massacred a Tubo village before, killing both the old and the young. However, that was against outsiders. Now Seymour Duomo understood the meaning of a massacre within the village. No wonder Duo didn't want to go back to the tribe. No wonder the local tribesmen didn't have such a strong sense of resistance. It wasn't that they didn't understand unity, but that their leaders abandoned them too easily. If they didn't have religious beliefs, they would have been finished long ago. Did you hear that? We're not asking you to kill him. We're treating him. Wang Wan looked at Seymour Duomo with a cold gaze. Seymour Duomo couldn't help but shudder. After he reacted, he nodded repeatedly. Yes, I know. You are the one who treated them. Let me say this first. I have nothing to exchange for this help when you do things. Our medical services are free. We don't expect you to give us anything. You arrange it. Zhang Xiaobao continued. Then, he didn't want to look at Seymour Duomo anymore. He pulled Wang Wan and left. Seymour Duomo stood where he was and watched the two people leave, as well as the guards hiding in the dark one after another. He sighed and muttered, If I had known that you weren't going to kill, I wouldn't have said kill. Anyway, the old and weak will die slowly. I'll see if you can save them when we're on our way. You don't understand the cruelty here. Seymour Duomo felt that he was right. In fact, he also wanted to kill a lot of burdens. He felt that it was useless to keep those people alive. In the past, he always sent the old, powerless and sick people outside, so that they could contribute to him at the last moment of their lives. With a sneer, Seymour Duomo touched the small bottle that contained the medicine to treat him, and walked unhurriedly to his palace. A race that doesn't know how to love cannot survive. They will eventually be ruled or controlled by others. I guess he's still thinking that we don't understand the situation here. There are many weak and old people in the team, and they think that our kindness is a joke. But he definitely doesn't think that without this kindness, we wouldn't have the status we have in Tang today. Should we give up on the old and weak? If we lost a battle and were running away, maybe we would choose to give up. But we definitely can't be so calm. I believe that every night, I will be awakened by nightmares. I saw Seymour Duomo's hesitation. At that moment, I didn't know whether he didn't want to kill, or whether he was considering who to kill, and whether he wanted to use this opportunity to get rid of the disobedient. Therefore, only a ruler who recognizes his own power and responsibility is qualified to survive in this world. Otherwise, when the people know that there is another ruler who cares for their people, they will inevitably rebel. At the same time, the foundation of the country will be shaken. You will find that even if you don't give him advanced weapons, many people in the country will die from violence. There will be more violent deaths than when you give him advanced weapons, but know how to care for the people or fear the people. Zhang Xiaobao was provoked by Seymour Duomo. When he spoke, he was thinking about how to find a chance to kill Seymour Duomo. This kind of person can't be left alive. If he wanted to achieve a certain political goal, he could send Seymour Duomo to do things that would harm others. When he reached the point of infuriation, he would appear and kill Seymour Duomo. He believed that he would gain the favor of those who were bullied by him. But obviously he couldn't do that. If he did that, his heart would be dirty. Sending someone to do it, and using the lives of the people who did it to achieve his goal was worse than doing it himself. You mean to give everyone in Tang a gun? Wang Wan turned and asked. Why not? Do you think that you have to use a gun to kill people? As long as the laws against the people at the grassroots level are fair, even if they have the means to kill people who make them angry, they won't use it. It's people who kill, not guns. If possible, not only will I give the people of Tang guns, but I will also tell them that if an official bullies you, and you don't have the chance to send a telegram, and your life is threatened, then you should shoot. Shoot at that official and shoot at the person who threatens your life. Zhang Xiaobao made a shooting action as he spoke, and there was a cold smile on his face. If we do as you say, Tang will be in chaos. Well, at least that's what the corrupt officials of Tang will think. You don't need to say it. I'll say it for you. Wang Wan smacked Zhang Xiaobao's hand that was about to raise the gun and said. She actually understood that when people said that more people died from gunfire in other countries, it was actually a one-sided view. Countries without guns had more people dying from knives and bricks. When everyone had a gun, they naturally knew how to respect life. When everyone had their own car, they naturally wouldn't think that pedestrians had to let them go first. Respect came from the same social status. Social status depended on hard work and effort. Whether hard work and effort produced results, or rather, the probability of producing theoretical results, depended on the policies of the ruling class of the society. That's why we have to cherish this era. We have to maintain the development of economy and technology, strengthen traditional morals, strengthen the law, and create a stable social environment. Even the rulers have to act in the interests of the majority when they do things. Zhang Xiaobao concluded. Wang Wan smiled. Does that mean that Li Longji has no choice but to compromise? Li Longji is actually quite cute. Zhang Xiaobao also smiled. How is he cute? What are you looking at? As Wang Wan spoke, she saw Zhang Xiaobao looking around, so she followed suit. I'm looking to see if there are any spies. We have people in the palace providing information. Don't you think he's cute? He has no choice. Can't he just get rid of us? He's not stupid. He still wants to be the emperor. He's probably thinking of us right now, and wants us to go back quickly, so that he can travel. This means that his power is restricted. Even if he can tolerate the turmoil in the country, he can't tolerate the powerful weapons of an unknown country that can attack from thousands of miles away. When it reaches this level, he'll probably have other thoughts. Then he has to wait. Wait. Aren't we all waiting? Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan chatted all the way back to the camp, and they happened to see the little ones busying themselves there. There was a large basin filled with a lot of yellow-black scrambled eggs. On the other side was a chopping board. Xiao Bei and the others took the small root vegetables out of the water and handed them to Su Yilong. Su Yilong held the knife in one hand and the small root vegetables in the other, working hard to cut them. Be careful, don't cut your hand. Our knife is very fast. You cut it one by one. Don't think that you're as agile as the logistics master in the team. When you find that you feel uncomfortable cutting the vegetables, you have to stop and adjust. Don't think that there's only a little left and cut through it. Understand? Xiao Bei held a few washed small roots in his hand and nervously watched Su Yilong cut there. His mouth didn't stop talking. Su Yilong was sweating profusely. Looking at the muscles on his arms that were exposed when he rolled up his sleeves, she knew how nervous he was. But he still insisted, cutting while replying to Xiao Bei. I know, I've written it all down. You guys know more. I'm far worse than Xiao Chang and Xiao Gang. Then you still want to cut? Let them do it. Xiao Bei glanced at Xiao Chang and Xiao Gang who were kneading the dough and said to Su Yilong, how can I let you do dangerous things? Otherwise, when Xiao Bao and Cuckoo see it, I don't dare to imagine the consequences. If the knife is not sharpened so fast, will it? It will cut off your hand. A blunt knife hurts people. Xiao Bei and the others usually use very fast knives. Not to mention cutting hair. As long as your hand touches it, it will definitely be cut. Zhang Xiaobao's voice came. Brother, sister, you're back. We were cutting the stuffing. We wanted to cut it, but we found that if we cut it, all the vegetables will fly away. So we had to cut it. Why, brother? Xiao Bei grabbed the small root vegetables and ran in front of Zhang Xiaobao. As he spoke, he put the small root vegetables in front of Zhang Xiaobao's mouth and let him eat. Zhang Xiaobao dodged back. Who put the garlic together with the small root vegetables? The color and size are different. Let's take a good look. Oh, I know the garlic, but there are only a few. It's not good to eat raw as it's too spicy. This thing is useless. Brother, why do you think it flew away when you cut it? Xiao Bei retracted his hand and looked. That's right, the garlic is their purple skin. This is physics knowledge. If you want something to fly out when it's under force, You have to control the transmission of force and the physical characteristics of the current object. On the other hand, if you don't let something fly, you also have to control it. The easier it is to cut something, the harder it is to fly, so you have to fix it when processing metal parts. Then there are two ways to cut vegetables. One is to do it like me. As Zhang Xiaobao spoke, he stepped forward and picked up the other kitchen knife beside him. He took the mixture of root and garlic from Xiaobei's hands and placed it on the chopping board. The knife rose and fell, and after a few swings, the mixture was cut into small pieces. Then, he continued to cut it into smaller pieces. This is the familiarity of the tool and the thing being cut. It also requires strong control. Practice makes perfect. It's very simple, but you need to persevere. Wow, brother is so awesome. Xiaobei clapped his hands and shouted. Su Yilong stopped and listened carefully. She knew how Xiaobao's cooking skills were, but she had only eaten before. She had never seen Xiaobao cook. Today it was an eye-opener. Why couldn't it fly? The knife was obviously not used for cutting. Zhang Xiaobao continued. There's another way. It's much simpler. Bring all the vegetables you've washed over. The few little guys brought the things up and piled them together. Zhang Xiaobao gathered them again, and then began to cut with the knife. As he cut, he said, this method is to use other things to block the vegetables that are about to fly out. Stack the vegetables together, and the knife cuts in the middle. In fact, they will fly, but they will be blocked. The premise is that the chopping board must be fixed firmly. Otherwise, with the force of the chopping board, the vibration produced will still shake the things away. Observe more in your daily life. You will find that the thickness of the chopping board used to cut vegetables doesn't matter, but the chopping board used to cut vegetables must be thick wood, and it must be one piece, not a few pieces of bamboo stuck together. But we can't put metal plates, springs, and shock absorbers on the chopping board. That will reduce the kinetic energy of the falling knife. We need a tool table that can mitigate the force and hold it in. Only then can we use it to cut. This is actually the simplest physics analysis and application. When cutting vegetables, there is also a need to guide the flow. Similarly, when cooking, heating is inseparable from physics. We also have to pay attention to the chemical reaction. When different ingredients are put together, poisonous substances will be produced. This is called the mutual promotion and restraint of ingredients. The purpose of learning knowledge is to apply it. You have to do more often when you have nothing to do. Do it purposefully. This will not only promote your hands-on ability, but also deepen your grasp and understanding of knowledge. After Zhang Xiaobao finished speaking, the vegetables on the chopping board were also chopped. A few pieces flew, but most of them were not a problem. This was within the normal range. The vegetables that were chopped by the special grade chef would also fly. If he didn't want them to fly, he would cut them. Of course, there were also experts who would cut things flying when cutting vegetables. We have to think more about how to play in the future. Xiaobei understood and said happily. Su Yilong's face was full of gratitude. She knew that Xiaobao said this for her to hear. She usually had access to a lot of books, but she just read them. She never thought that physics and chemistry could be used in cooking. Chapter 1344. The 9 little guys were not willing to think about things that were too deep. They would only think about it when they needed it, and they were not worried about not being able to figure it out. They had brothers and sisters to back them up, and they had very powerful brothers and sisters. Therefore, what they were thinking about now was how to wrap the small root cabbage in a box and fry it in a pan. Today, they planned to cook a meal by themselves, including the cat ear soup that went with the small root cabbage box. But there was no fresh cucumber pickles. If the team came to travel, fresh cucumbers would not be a problem. Someone would specially carry soil and grow cucumbers on it. But now it was a war. Who dared to waste manpower and material resources like that? If there was a spare place, it would be better to fill it with salt or bullets. The 9 people who made the box for the first time were very nervous. Su Yilong also did not cook. He could not cut the vegetables well. What else could they expect him to do? As the main force of the box, Su Yilong was very excited. He felt that the action of making pancakes could be regarded as a kind of art. But only those who made pancakes every day understood that it was actually a kind of life. Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan no longer went into rest. Instead, they took out folding stools and sat down, watching their younger siblings and Su Yilong cook. The two looked at each other and remembered the first time they made wontons for their family. The same passion, the same excitement, and the different craftsmanship. Even if the little guys put their heart into the box they made was also strange. They could not even squeeze the edges of the box. Only the clumsiness can be seen in the simplicity. Great skills appear clumsy. Zhang Xiaobao did not care. There were only 3 consequences if the box was not wrapped well. First, the stuffing was leaked. Second, the stuffing was not cooked in the thick part. And third, the thin part was scratched. This was not a big problem. If the stuffing was leaked, it could also be fried and eaten. If it was not cooked, it was not a big problem. In the stuffing of wild bird eggs and small root cabbage, the bird eggs had to be fried first. The small root cabbage could be eaten raw or cooked. As for the scratched part, it could be eaten as a strange rice crust. As long as the little ones put their heart into it, no matter what they made, the adults would feel that it was delicious. Even the delicacies made by the top-class chefs were not as delicious as the noodles made by the children. This was the consensus of the adults in the world. Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan didn't care and just waited to eat. The little ones also didn't think about the food they made. They maintained absolute confidence that the food they made would definitely be good. Only Su Yilong, who was slightly older, was afraid. She was worried that Xiaobao and Cuckoo would not like the food she made. From time to time, he would look at the pot, then at Xiaobei and the others who were wrapping the boxes. He looked at the stuffing in the basin and suddenly had an idea. He suggested, "Can we add some meat inside?" Xiaobei was tasting the newly mixed stuffing to see how it was salty. When she heard Su Yilong's movement, she raised her head to look at him and said helplessly, "Brother Yilong, cooking is the same as composing poems. It doesn't matter how much flavor you add. It depends on whether you can express a flavor. Just like the chive stuffing, if you want to add meat, you can. It's very simple. No matter what kind of meat you add, it's not a problem. It doesn't matter if it's nutritious mutton, warm chicken, or cold crab meat. It can all be mixed in." But I said, understand? Xiaobei was like an adult. It was very difficult for her to make food, but she ate a lot. When she reached a certain level, when she was used to the wind and waves, the trickling stream was the pursuit. Su Yilong knew what chives were. She didn't like to eat them usually. Every time she ate them, she would have a stomachache. It was only when she ate at Zhang Xiaobao and Wang restaurant that she was fine. He also didn't know what was going on. Seeing that Xiaobei said that she could put everything, he asked, "Isn't it good to put venison?" "Okay, but we want to eat the pure taste of the root vegetables. The monarch, the minister, and the assistant minister are the rules. Whether it's used in medicine, calligraphy, or food now, who is the monarch and who is the minister? When you put venison, I only want to eat venison. Moreover, eating venison and root vegetables together is too nutritious. Then why did you put wild bird eggs?" Su Yilong asked as if he was asking for advice. In terms of enjoyment, he was very clear that he was not the opponent of the little guys. Although they suffered a lot, that was because they were willing to. However, if they didn't suffer, when it came to enjoyment, he was far behind them. Xiaobei spat out the stuffing in her mouth and reached for the salt. When she touched the box of salt, she paused. She bit her lower lip, looked up at the sky, rolled her eyes and retracted her hand. "You can't put any more salt. If there's less salt, you can eat it with other seasonings. If there's too much salt, you can't reduce it. It's not like you're making takeout." "Then, what did you say?" "Bird eggs. It's fresh." Brother and sister said that the simpler the organization structure, the fresher the taste. If you want to put things, you can put river prawns. It has to be big. Only meat, no shell. Sea prawns can't. Sea prawns are too fresh and will suppress the taste of the root vegetables. We want to eat the root vegetables. Then why not put river prawns? Su Yilong felt that there was a lot of knowledge in eating, so he became more and more curious. Because no one catches and peels prawns. If you want to eat something with 3 fresh stuffing, the egg has to be cooked, but the prawns have to be raw. If you boil the prawns in water, they become stuffing, and then heat them up again. It's easy to cut your hand when you peel the raw prawns. I'd rather not eat it than do it. What if you get injured or infected? Xiaobei shook her 2 chubby little hands, indicating that she didn't want to be cut. Su Yilong had to admit that she couldn't compare with the little guys in many aspects of life. For a moment, she couldn't help but feel envious. It wasn't that she hadn't experienced life, but that no one had ever told her this in her daily life. It seemed very simple, but there was endless knowledge in it. No wonder His Majesty also put his youngest children beside Xiaobao and Cuckoo. They were the eldest princess and the first prince. It turned out that their education started from the bits and pieces of life. After an hour, the root vegetable boxes were done. Black, yellow, and gray, they were stacked one by one. They were put on a plate and sent to the dining table in front of Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan. There was also a bowl of wild vegetable soup with the smell of oil floating in it. Because the root vegetable boxes were limited in quantity, they were usually only eaten in the inner courtyard for Xiaobei and the others. The wild vegetable soup was much easier to make. In addition to some chopped green onions, there was water, salt, pepper powder, and some uncooked oil. There were 2 full pots, less than half a basket of vegetables in them. They were distributed to more people to drink. There were a few wild vegetable leaves in each bowl. Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan had the most wild vegetables in their bowls. This soup was simple to make, but it was very good for people's health. Regardless of whether the weather was cold or hot, drinking it while eating would replenish water. Furthermore, it was eaten with steamed buns, so there was no need for vegetables. It couldn't be compared to the soup of the rich and powerful. That kind of soup was boiled or boiled. Speaking of the soup with the best taste, the rich and powerful generally couldn't drink it. It wasn't that they didn't have the ingredients, but that they didn't have the skills. Zhang Xiaobao drank a mouthful and looked at Wang Wan. Wang Wan smacked her lips and said, "No wonder people in the south said that northerners' soup is scrubbed water. If the oil isn't boiled well, it is indeed very similar to scrubbed water. If the southerners' soup isn't boiled well, it's no different from the northerners' pig food. Let's not attack each other, okay?" Generally, only people who have never been out, or people who went out and suffered losses, are willing to attack each other. Whoever attacks shows that they have low self-esteem. The strong are respected wherever they go, so they are friendly to everyone. When I was abroad, I didn't attack the country. I even wanted to come back, but I knew that as long as I showed my face, I would definitely be caught. Especially beautiful geniuses, they were very willing to catch me. Zhang Xiaobao looked at the soup bowl in front of him and said to Wang Wan. Wang Wan took a bite of the small vegetable box and swallowed it slowly. She drank 2 mouthfuls of soup and let out a long breath. Now I don't have to worry about the excess food in my stomach. But people who have gastric problems definitely can't eat this kind of box. Eat, don't complain. It's my mission to catch you. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the beauty. Xiaobei, come. Let me tell you. Next time when you make this kind of soup, remember to sprinkle the chopped green onions into the oil first. If the chopped green onions don't turn black, it means that the oil temperature is not enough. Don't add water immediately. Zhang Xiaobao said to Wang Wan. Seeing that Wang Wan's eyes began to change, he hurriedly called his sister. Xiaobei also knew that the taste was not good, but this was made by them. She had to drink and eat. She picked up a black box on both sides and put it on her brother's plate. She said, "I haven't made it before, so I'm not familiar with it. Next time I won't. If it's not good, don't drink it." Zhang Xiaobao was speechless. You think it's only the soup that's not good? Then why did you pick up a black box for me? But he said, how is it not good? It's just that it hasn't reached the highest level. If the soup is given to the people of Duoduo tribe to drink, they'll be happy to death. It's good enough that there's salt. I think so too. Xiaobei was very considerate, but she still looked at the soup and frowned. She asked, "Brother, is there a way to not have the smell of raw oil no matter when you add water?" "There is." Zhang Xiaobao patted Xiaobei's head. "It's fine as long as the oil is cooked before. Didn't you notice that there are many oil jars in our kitchen? It's that simple? Then what should we do now that the soup already has the smell of raw oil? Xiao Bei felt that her first time cooking was a failure. Do you still have chopped green onions? Yes, there are wild onions in the mountains, a lot of them. You just need to chop the chopped green onions and sprinkle them directly on top of the soup. Zhang Xiaobao gave a remedy in a situation where there was no other way. Xiao Bei was happy. Sure enough, her brother was the best. She threw down the chopsticks in her hand and ran to find Xiao Yuan and the others to make arrangements. Zhang Xiaobao smiled and said to Wang Wan, "Eat beauty. Actually, this soup and box are not bad." The title of beauty was effective. Wang Wan did not mention what had just happened. She gently drank the soup, and it seemed that it was really delicious. Then she said, "Compared to the people in the refugee area, the food in front of us is a delicacy." Yes, the damage caused by natural disasters is great, but there are also many man-made refugee areas. I wonder how many refugees will appear in Duo tribe this time. Zhang Xiaobao also carefully chewed the black box that Xiao Bei had given them. It depends on the situation at sea. Wang Wan turned her head and looked to the west. Chapter 1345. Wind direction southwest. Wind speed 5. The situation under the water is unknown. It is not easy for large ships to approach the shore. Send small ships into the water. Pay attention to the tail waves. On the ship closest to the shore, someone on the lookout tower sent out a signal with a sailfish. In the fleet of large ships, there were immediately 100 smaller ships. 2 small ships, each 4.5 meters long and 2 meters wide, came down from each ship. Each small ship could seat 8 people. They rowed toward the shore, and there were also things covered with canvas on the ships. About 200 li away from the 1,000 ships, there were 9,000 ships anchored there, including 2,000 gunboats. These were all the naval forces the Tang Empire could muster. Over the years, they had built 3,000 gunboats. 200 were left in the country and 500 were used to patrol the seas. Wherever there were Tang merchant ships, there would be Tang gunboats. The rest were all sent here. In the future, they would not build the same type of gunboats. New gunboats were rarely built. Usually they would build 2 or 3, and send them to the seas, lakes, Yellow River, and Yangtze River for training, and to learn the techniques. If there was a need, the large shipyards would start construction at the same time. The other ships anchored on the sea were transport ships and supply ships. There were 200,000 soldiers on the shore this time. For a long time, they would not be able to get supplies from the country. They also needed to carry livestock for transportation. 10,000 ships sounded like a number, but when looking at it, one would never compare this number with the situation on the sea. There were already merchant ships coming back from farther away. When they saw the ships on the sea, the people on the ships ran up and shouted, "Boss, boss, quick, come out and look at the ships." A merchant ship called Longing Tang was returning to the Tang Empire along the shore. The lookout on the mast saw the scene in front of him through a telescope and shouted at the top of his lungs. As he shouted, he climbed down from the mast. "What are you shouting for? Little Dong, when can you be more steady? Ever since we left the Tang Empire, I haven't seen you rest. You shout when you see fish, you shout when you see seabirds. Look at the ship, we are already on the ship. It's not like we haven't seen ships before. Is this a merchant ship or a guard ship of the Tang Empire?" On the deck, in a small wooden hut, a person was rolling noodles. Next to him was a wooden shelf. On the paper there were 3 very small children. From their clothes, it could be seen that they were 2 boys and 1 girl. When he heard the lookout shout, he quickly added some cold water into the pot and shouted back. The man he called Xiao Dong had already slipped down from the mast very deftly and stood in the doorway. He sniffed and said, "Boss, oh I mean Captain. You made noodles for me again. There are boats, many boats." "Who made it for you?" "The noodles I brought from the Tang Empire were not much to eat. I cooked and ate a few mouthfuls, but when I got home, the 3 kids kept pestering me. I couldn't even eat a peaceful meal of noodles. When I came out, they were less than 1 year old. When I went back, they would be 3 years old. That is the time when they are naughty. The captain narrowed his eyes as he looked at the picture on the paper. Suddenly he glared at Xiao Dong and said, Xiao Dong, I told you 100 times to hang the binoculars around your neck. You just had to take off the rope. If you really fell into the sea, I won't be your witness when we get back. Let's see how the authorities will deal with you. Boss, don't worry. You see, I have a rope tied around my waist. I can't wear it around my neck. My neck will be worn out after a long time. Boss, oh captain, I mean ship, if you don't believe me, you can take a look with the binoculars later. It's so scary. Xiao Dong pulled the binoculars. Sure enough, there was a rope tied around his waist. Every big ship had 2 of these things. One was held by the captain, and the other was given to the lookout. When they came out, they would file a record. When they got back, even if it was broken, they would bring the pieces to the state-level authorities for inspection. If they lost it, and no one was there to prove it, they would be punished. The captain was not in a hurry. He didn't expect what kind of scene it would be. He only thought that there was a bigger trading fleet that wanted to meet with his small fleet here. After that, they would greet each other and go their separate ways. In that case, he would be able to see it in a while. It was more important to eat the noodles he brought from the Tang Empire first. It took a long time for the noodles to enter the pot, so the time it took to cook them was shorter. After a few minutes, the noodles were ready. After soaking them in cold water for a while, the captain took another can, opened it, and scooped out a few spoonfuls of bean paste. He scooped a few spoonfuls of bean paste into a bowl and ate a mouthful. Delicious. The noodles and bean paste from my hometown are still the best. Why are you looking at me? If you want to eat, you can eat it yourself. Are you waiting for me to serve you? Captain, you are really too noble. Little Dong happily ran over, picked up the noodles and put in the sauce. He lowered his head and stuffed half of the noodles into the bowl. Then, he raised his head and rubbed his mouth in satisfaction. Captain, I just remembered. A month ago, Little Bean was sick and wanted to eat noodles. You took out a can of bean paste and said that it was the last one. Today, could it be? I'm dreaming? Yes, now that you have woken up from your dream, go up and take a look. Are you still full? I only made this much. That bean paste, aren't you afraid of being salty? When the captain was speaking, Xiao Dong picked up 2 more chopsticks of noodles and put the bean paste on the noodles. I have woken up from my dream. Boss, I am going up now. You eat slowly. I will continue to feel the power of the Tang fleet. After finishing 2 bowls of noodles, Xiao Dong gulped down a mouthful of water. He wiped his mouth and ran out, leaving only one sentence. You're lying to me. I won't even look at it. I'll eat noodles. Son, daughter, wait for me to go back. I'll make noodles for you every day. The goods on the 5 ships are all yours. These are goods from Africa that Xiaobao and Cuckoo mentioned. They're very valuable. The captain continued to slurp his noodles unhurriedly, muttering as he looked at the 3 children drawn on the paper. By the time he was full, a quarter of an hour had passed. He let out a satisfied burp and looked at the noodles that hadn't been cooked yet. He gently placed the can of bean paste on the table and wondered who would be lucky enough to run over first. That way, they would be able to cook the noodles themselves. The captain rubbed his stomach and took the binoculars. He strolled outside and continued to look at the sea and blue sky. He thought of Xiaodong's words and looked ahead with the binoculars. Ah, so many ships. Damn, this is the Tang fleet. Our Tang has so many ships. Reflected in the captain's eyes were ships after ships with dragon flags fluttering in the wind. Everywhere he looked, there were only ships. There was no end in sight. At the end of the sea and the sky, he could vaguely see the silhouettes of ships. The captain was dumbfounded. He swallowed hard and murmured, "What's going on? Am I dreaming? No, absolutely not. Why would the great Tang's fleet come here? Who is going to be unlucky? So beautiful, so mighty. Come out for this, captain. Look at the fleet. It is the Tang fleet." After muttering to himself, the captain began to shout to the cabin below the deck. His hands holding the binoculars turned white, and his body trembled uncontrollably. The other ships didn't have string cannons. In the past, they had a gun at the bow. He could only see a few gunships and supply ships that the warships had no intention of firing while dozens of ships at the dock at the same time. This was a sign of absolute confidence. Today, he was truly satisfied. His nephew rolled his eyes and reminded, had so many warships. When gathered together, they could blot out the sky. Many cannibals. This was the Tang fleet. Xiaobao and Cuckoo are fighting many cannibals. People. When we came out, it was only a small puffed out his chest. I didn't expect that by the time we came back, he had the urge to cry. They were already fighting. The ship in front of him definitely isn't no longer be called a ship. I know. It was like a mountain range. Why would they need so many ships and unending battle? What could be prouder than this? But there are too many gunships. More footsteps came from the deck. Ships to fight? Hearing the captain shout, the captain thought hard. The sailors thought that something had happened and ran out. I understand. However, Xiaobao and Cuckoo aren't sending people to attack the ship. They were all stunned. They are transporting soldiers. Even without binoculars, if the gunships can attack the ships in front of them, they can also attack the shore. It was just that they couldn't see the flags on them. The cannibals are finished. They could see the hull of the closest ship. The captain's nephew couldn't understand. Further away. If they sent soldiers, they would still have to fight. Dots or black lines. They were deep in the shore. Big uncle, and the gunships couldn't go up. Where did these ships come from? The captain's nephew didn't think too much frightening. Instead, a sailor said to the captain with wide eyes inside, "Huh, it's so beautiful." From? I've always heard people say that Cuckoo's gunships broke through the waves. Only my great Tang. Majestic formation. I can see clearly. I couldn't imagine what it was like. Those are gunships. Now I know. Gunships and more gunships. If I were the enemy, I would just surrender. There's no way to fight this battle going to deal with. In front of us, the captain could now see the configuration of the ships clearly. Later, the gunships were clearly different from the ones the captain had seen. Fishing boats moving together. Although he couldn't see the cannons, and I think it's spectacular. He could see the wooden planks covering the muzzles. Does the great Tang fleet have? Those familiar with the great Tang's gunships knew hearing his words, once the wooden planks the other crew members on the deck, the cannons would be exposed. The closer they got, the more they felt the oppression of the motherland's invincible fleet. They belonged to the great Tang. Usually, they didn't need to send many. 1 or 2 gunships and 3 to 5 supply ships were enough to protect the safety of the people outside. When there was a real problem, the great Tang would gather so many ships and form a boundless fleet. With the protection of the armed forces on the sea, they could go anywhere in the world. Captain, when we go back, if we see ships from other small countries, such as Jinla or Japan, we'll stick to them and see if they dare to provoke us. The invincible fleet of the great Tang will crush them. A crew member shouted excitedly. You're the one who sticks to them, and you dare to provoke them? Isn't it a provocation? The great Tang fleet is powerful, but it's not for you to provoke them. Don't you need to spend money? Are you stupid? Or are Xiao Bao and Cuckoo stupid? Or is it the emperor? The captain followed the voice and glared at him. Isn't it said that the great Tang is willing to do all it can for one person? I'm also a person of the great Tang, the man retorted. He was immediately met with all sorts of criticism. I say, Qin Clan's second son, I told you not to come. You're such a fool. But you insisted on coming. Next time, no matter what you say, I won't agree to bring you along. Idiot, in the future I'll call you that. And you dare to say that you'll do all it can? That's only because you're in a special situation, like when you're at war with multiple countries at the same time. It's not because you've been bitten by a fish, and the entire Great Tang has to take turns rubbing your face. You're truly lacking compared to your brother and brother. If you run into two other ships, the Great Tang has to send you this fleet, and they have to cooperate with you? One patrol ship is enough. Boy, you're sick. You need to be treated. Old 2, I'm confused. Why do you have to provoke others? If their ships are filled with valuable goods, then after you provoke them, the Great Tang's armed ships will go and help you steal the goods. But if their ships are filled with rotten fish and shrimps, then after you've provoked them, our Great Tang ships will go and help you fight. We won't get any benefits. Isn't that just making trouble for the Great Tang army? Brother Chen, you're not young anymore. If the wind was so strong that it was dangerous, you're my younger brother. The fleet would definitely send a ship to inform their merchant ships. You're also talking about me. Since no one had come to inform them, family, it meant that the younger brother reacted and hurriedly defended his older brother. Since this was the case, that's the 5 ships on their side would enter the fleet in a short while. Stop talking about my older brother. Protect them. Look at the ships. The wind began to pick up after having their fill, and the sails of the 5 merchant ships formed a large angle with the ship. And when their gazes to the Great Tang fleet, they would feel like the ship was moving at an angle. As the wind howled and the waves battered the sides of the ship, the sound of drums and horns came from the fleet in front of them. All of them steadied themselves and experienced the feeling of riding the wind and waves. Sails began to lower their sails. Although the wind was blowing from the side, Big Uncle, what are they doing? The ships were actually moving faster. The captain's nephew asked 30 minutes later. The captain was also puzzled. Finally brushed past the closest Tang warship. He suddenly realized that the clouds in the sky were moving faster and faster. Soldiers wearing different types of Navy uniforms crew were saluting the merchant ships. Lower the horizontal sail and raise posture and neat movements. A gale is coming from the on the merchant ships. Don't look at the ship. They all returned the blown away that were out of shape. Only then did the crew react. Deeper and deeper into the fleet. They hurriedly got into position. They couldn't see the outside and began to do their work. There were only ships. The horizontal sail was lowered, and the orderly salutes of the soldiers on the separate position. The speed of the ship began to decrease. The blood of the people on the observation deck. They saw the majestic warships and slipped the resolute soldiers. After a while, the crowd gathered and at the flapping war banners. Only the people controlling the sail, they felt very reassured, and the helm were unable there was to nothing in the world that could fight against this army. When encountering such a situation at sea, and the eyes of the soldiers showed no sign of retreat or weakness. Each time, they would be worried that something would happen and sell the goods, and that they wouldn't be able to return home. 10% of the net profit. The people on the ship were very relaxed. The soldiers of my Great Tang fleet of their motherland. Our dignity in the outside world depends on them. The captain solemnly said. How can my younger brothers and sisters be wronged? This time I definitely can't. Enough. Seymour Damoka already knows that he was wrong. Why force him to death? Wang Wan interrupted Zhang Xiaobao. She looked at Seymour Damoka and continued. Chief Seymour Damoka, although this matter doesn't matter much, children are different from adults. I can't tie them up. How about this? You stay away from them, and don't let them see you. What if the little guy shoots accurately again? Don't you think so? Yes. I'll stay away. I won't be near them. Seymour Damoka agreed readily. Someone come and take Seymour Damoka to a safe place, Wang Wan ordered. Immediately, someone came and took Seymour Damoka to a safe place. Seymour Damoka felt very wronged. He didn't mean that. How did it become like this? He didn't know that he actually didn't feel wronged at all. If he could let the elders in the tribe accompany him to eat, or let his women accompany him to eat, Wang Wan would temporarily tolerate him. But he only cared about himself. He was too selfish. This kind of selfishness reflected in the process of surrendering. He didn't have any weaknesses. Even if you used his family to threaten him, it would be useless. This kind of person could be used, but could not be trusted. The problem was that Wang Wan felt that Seymour Damoka didn't even have any value to be used. He didn't look like a traitor who could be used to help the team and their own people. After using him, they would get rid of him. In this world, no enemy would be good to a traitor. It only depended on how much the traitor could contribute. Therefore, Wang Wan decided to follow the plan. She didn't kill Seymour Damoka, but tied him up. Chapter 1350. Now that Seymour Duomo's authority had been taken away, the women in the tribe were redistributed. The men in the tribe did not show any sense of collective honor. They were happy and worked harder to hunt wild beasts. The women in the tribe were more excited than the men. For the first time, they felt that their status had been elevated. They could freely choose a man instead of being assigned to a specific person. Therefore, they dug up all kinds of wild herbs seriously and took good care of the children in the tribe. It was like the simplest animal courtship. Regardless of whether it was a female or a male, they had to show their strengths to attract a better partner. This was natural selection. It was the most tragic for the males. They had to defeat their own kind to get the opposite sex. This was how the tribe survived. The old men that Seymour Duomo did not kill were taken care of by Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan like treasures. Seymour Duomo did not kill them not because he did not want to, but because he did not dare to. For people who depended on the weather for their livelihood, it was too difficult for the young to survive. When to plant the crops, when to harvest them, and how to take care of them were all knowledge or experience. If they killed all the old men, the tribe would be ruined. That was why Seymour Duomo left a small group of strong old men to do the work when there was no danger. When there was a problem that could not be solved, he would ask them for help. Just like how Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan loved the local old men when they went to Luzhou. The experienced old men could predict the weather more accurately than satellite cloud maps. Of course, weather prediction was also an accumulation of experience. It was not enough to just have equipment. There must be a corresponding module and a calculation formula. It's going to rain. It's going to rain heavily. It will rain for at least 5 days. I was wondering why the weather was so stuffy. Zhang Xiaobao had just received information from the old men in the tribe that there would be 5 days of continuous heavy rain. Wang Wan did not doubt this at all. There had always been a lot of rain in the area. Otherwise, there would not be floods every year. However, it had rained for 5 days in a row. How could the team cross the river? The Brahmaputra River was not a small ditch. It was impossible to swim across the river unless they threw away all their supplies. With this thought in mind, Wang Wan began to fret. I kind of hate Zhang Shogui and Yang Xixuan. They had many ships before, but they destroyed all of them after attacking the man-eaters. There's no time to cut wood now. Are we really going to have to run all the way to the Bay of Bengal and then cross the sea? It's mainly because the locals are too poor and backward. Can't you just build a bridge? Using chains or bamboo ropes with boards on top will make it much more convenient. We can't afford to be delayed for 5 days. I'll get someone to ask when they'll get off the boat. If they can spare 10 hours, we'll cross the river now. Zhang Xiaobao had a deeper understanding of the battle for bridges in war. It was no wonder that in every major war, there would be countless bridge explosions and bridge defenses. Building a ship was truly not an easy and relaxing job. Speed was the most important thing in war. The old men in the tribe ate pretty good food, and new clothes were made for them first. Similarly, they did not have much of a sense of belonging to their tribe. When they were questioned again, they discussed it with each other and came to a rough and accurate conclusion. It would take no more than 6 hours, at most 4 hours. Moreover, there would be light rain in front of them. Sending more than 15,000 people across the river in 4 hours, including livestock and other supplies, was a terrifying task.